chance at least, and this CZ kill could be everything. Finally, Zeus, he does something!
Looking for a second, he connects it. Oh, and he gets a third as well. Surely he's not going to pull this off. Oh, Caldera, the man, the myth, the beast.
Zyro, no help really, but he's still hitting shots. He's already got 3. And 5. And oh my God, Zyro! Unbelievable!
Go ahead.
No intro. Good morning, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. All right, fair enough. Welcome to Revenge by the Numbers, my dudes. It's the second show of the year, so you can see we're kind of like working out the kinks. You know, we're still dealing with that holiday schnapps. You know, that Yule grog, and well, you know, it's just the tail end. It's the tail end of the holidays. How you doing, dude? You having a good week, Duncan?
Yes. Like, for example, at the beginning of the show, I've decided I'm using my executive veto capacity to choose to introduce a small petty grievances topic, which is, if people know past episodes, they'll know exactly the vein that I'm on here. And crucially, right, if people don't know, like a lot of people, sadly, I had one of those illnesses where, like, basically right at Christmas coming into New Year, I had some sort of like cold/flu that just lasted 2 weeks. So sadly,
going around, yeah.
It actually sort of wrecked me, because in that time, which for everyone else is the off season and no one's watching any games, that's when I was going to do my videos on Frankie and Evil Geniuses. So sadly, those have gotten delayed, but they're going to get done. Don't worry. And don't worry, they will deliver. But I'll just say, along the Frankie line, I've got an update for you, because here's the thing about Frankie. She really has. Here's the thing. I can relate to this, Semmler. She has the same problem I used to have. I don't temporarily. We'll see if I can keep it up. You notice on Twitter, I don't do this anymore. And also, Froskurin has the same problem, which is we're really, really bad. If someone like triggers us on Twitter, just ignoring it. We can't just pretend we didn't see it. It didn't get to us. We don't say it. Unfortunately, we respond. So famously, I would always do the quote tweet, wouldn't I? Froskurin will do whatever she does. And then Frankie obviously just replies on Twitter. So you ready, Semmler? Here's what's fucked up, right? Because here's what I was told, including by Richard Lewis in my interview with him and by other people in the scene. What I was told was this, Semmler, that we're supposed to stop bringing up the Saudi thing in connection with Frankie, because actually she gets it now. I've been told, and I've heard on the No Majors Club at the last major, she apparently said to Richard something like, yeah, I've sort of realized now, like, you know, I worded it the wrong way and I was too, you know, harsh, and I didn't think of the consequences. And, you know, it has humbled me a little bit. I've realized maybe I was virtue signaling. But here's the problem, guys. If you tuned out then thinking that's the end of that story, you're sadly mistaken, because what you need to learn is how audiences work, like what circle of people you're in, and how platforms work. Because that was when Frankie, you remember the context, she was on Richard Lewis's stream on the No Majors Club being like lightly roasted, or that topic being brought up. In that setting, yeah, she pretended to be humble. She pretended, take it on the chin, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, learn. I'm an independent woman. Well, not anymore. I'm a married woman with a kid, making my own way in esports, this men's industry. No, because here's the problem, guys. She only did that, I'm telling you right now, it's my speculation, because she was on Richard's stream, and that's the Richard almost like draws it out of me. You know, you can't have bullshit around Richard Lewis. He's going to come up eventually.
He tries to take her side and everything as well. You know, he really does try to. It's
just trying to see her side, I would say. I wouldn't
exactly.
say I would just say trying to figure out what. And by the way, there obviously is context behind the scenes. But here's what's funny. So today on Twitter, you had proof that, spoiler, she's learned nothing. People like her, by the way, Frankie, Riot Games, sorry, Blizzard. None of these people will learn anything. You know why? Because they didn't actually go through like a hero's journey. They didn't have like an experience where they met a challenge. They were told by the results of the challenge, like, I'm right or I'm wrong. No, what happened was they just did the fucked up thing, or said the fucked up thing, got caught, and now it's just awkward that they're trying to result as a lot being caught. That's it. Like, remember, Riot Games have never done a mea culpa for all thing with women. Blizzard just fired people. That's it. Frankie just pretends like, it's unfortunate because I would love to virtue signal. So here's the joke, Semmler. Here's the update. On Twitter today, because now loads of people, because I've gone at her a bunch, know that she's a total hypocrite on the Saudi shit. Here's the meme for you. So she just puts a tweet. Already, this tweet's amazing, Semmler. You ready? Here's her opening gambit. She just puts a tweet on Twitter. You ready? She goes, you think it's hard being a woman in esports? Already, I'm out. But let's pretend I'm not. Let's pretend I'm back in. So, all right, I tried to get out, but I'm actually strapped in, so I can't move. So, you think it's hard being a woman in esports? Please, I can't do this again. Right, you ready? Next sentence. Try taking time out to have a baby. Literally your choice. Literally something you chose completely. But okay, let's pretend, because in that context, it sounds for real, by the way. Like if you're a woman, it's already bloody hard enough. And then all of a sudden, like, and a baby's just come out of nowhere. It's going to be even harder now. Like, luckily it ain't like that. A stork didn't just drop it off because you were doing such a great job doing fucking TI or whatever. But anyway, here's where it gets funny. That opening gambit, a random guy, like just a total, like a Twitter egg type guy, just comes in and he goes, are you ready? He goes, you think it's hard upholding your moral standards? Question mark. Try accepting a job from people who deny the rights of women and the LGBTQ plus community. By the way, yes, very harsh, but it's an anonymous guy on Twitter just taking her to task, isn't it? Her reply is so nuts, Semmler. I almost question if she's real or some sort of NPC. You ready for her reply? She tries to dunk this guy. And when you see the angle, it's so bad. This is for real, her angle. Are you ready? And she's just thinking, got him. Are you ready? Right? So he's just said, try, uphold your moral standard. She just goes, Twitter is part owned by Saudi. Find yourself a cleaner moral high ground to berate me from. Right? Are you ready? Guys, for real. This guy just basically goes like, well, essentially he goes like, you're immoral and work with people who would kill gay people, your friends that you claimed you never work with. And she goes, oh, yeah? Well, you're on Twitter, which is minorly owned by the same people who pay me. Oh, shit, bro, that isn't at all equivalent. Are you kidding? What are you talking about? Like, that's a dude, Semmler. Anyone who actually stands by at that and is giving her like the golf clap, like, mate, what is wrong with you? How fucked is your head that she won that battle? That's just whack, dude. And so what that implies to me is this, Semmler. I think she just knows how to play the audience that's in front of her. So I think when she's with Richard Lewis, she's like a fucked up Pokemon, Semmler. She's just got one of those aura effects. Like it's like aura effect, like clout. Fucking, what would it call? Like, I mean, what would it even be called? I mean, I guess the aura effect would be called something like clout, humbleness. And then it would be like, when within 30 e-meters of Richard Lewis Chad, I don't fucking know. Then you gain the effect of being humbled and being a reasonable person. But then the joke is when she's not within that aura of Richard, she just goes back to normal, just reverts to like, I'm right, I am a woman, and as a woman, I am always right. And then some guy's like, hey, why you work with murderers? Oh, yeah? Well, you're talking to me now for free on a murderer's app. Like, what is this? Anyway, I had to just I just knew long-time fans of the show would want an update on the story. It's so bad, isn't it? I know. The sad thing I've realized is this, Semmler. I think the other reason I can't bring myself to just get the video done is because I know it never ends. Like, I know there's more chapters coming. So part of me is like, exactly. I know it never ends. So whatever. I thought I'd just put that on the record so people would enjoy it. What a mad angle to take.
I had a laugh out loud moment just at the timing of it, like the synchronicity of it. Because I was having a conversation with somebody not too long ago about this very topic in esports, right? I mean, of course, Frankie wants to have her cake and eat it too. That's just
of course.
Classic, of course, it's just I want to be able to make all the decisions and get all the things and still be able to do everything at all times. It's like, no.
Well, the joke now, Semmler, is she wants to have her cake, eat it, and then her child to eat it also, and then also have the cake still. That's like her version of having her cake.
No, this tastes good. No.
Have you ever tried having your cake and eating it? Try being a woman and a mother at the same time.
Oh, fuck's sake. Dude,
that's like the tweet.
We were just sitting there going like, yes, this is very much a thing. It's like that's a reason why we've talked about it so much as well throughout the years over Counter-Strike, where it's not so much like the whole a player's getting old argument has pretty much been debunked at this point. It's pretty much like when a player starts having kids, when a player starts having a family, then they have time, they have to be at home, they have other priorities in life. Like that's when the drop off happens. It's not like, he's getting old and long in the tooth or whatever. It's like, no, Forrest had 2 kids. Neo had kids.
Do you know why that even is inferred by sports? Because famously in sports, they always say that the sports star's the deadbeat dad, isn't it? He never has any time for you. He's just playing sports all the time, and you just grow up like in an awesome nanny place where you see your dad like twice a week or something. Yeah, that's logically. If sports stars are like that, if in esports you're at home like you say with your family, you're not gonna have the time. Yeah, you're not gonna have the time.
That's precisely it. That was the conversation that we were kind of having, where it's just like, over the years, as soon as like this industry is not built for that. It's just that simple.
No, it's a young man's game, definitely.
For having a family in that way. Or you need to plan for it right from the beginning, where it's like your wife isn't going to work, your family travels with you wherever you go, and so you're always going to be able to like actually kind of have that family life, even remote, right? Because look at the way it is, and now it's I mean, it's probably on par, but I mean, there's probably more travel back in the day, but now it's like a little bit, I don't know, it's maybe stabilized a little bit, but it used to be that you'd spend like 250 days on the year, on the road. Like, that's not conducive to having a family with kids. It's just not how it works.
Sure.
It's an industry that is purely geared towards people who can fully commit to it, who can work long hours, who can travel at the drop of a hat, and who can stay on the road, live out of a suitcase for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, and not have anything holding them down and having to come back home. So you already have that advantage as a single person working in this industry, male or female, doesn't matter. It's just so long as you're single, you have that freedom. As soon as you have a relationship, bam, that's already one thing that's going to make it a little bit more difficult to compete, because now you have somebody else that you have to think of and consider. Maybe you can't say yes to every job that you want, right? And then you add a kid in, 2 kids, 3. That's it. Like, that's really it's trade-offs. It's not, I get to have the kids and then have all the jobs and everything at the same time. It's like, no, if you have to balance being home to take care of your family and have to, balance an income, all of a sudden there's other costs, everything gets more complicated. And so it's not an industry that's built for that sort of thing. It's just that simple.
You know what's sad, by the way? Even though it does affect us, and it means essentially we have less options, I would also extend the analogy further, Semmler, in the spirit of like doing an olive branch, and say that applies to why people like me, you, and Richard can't really be in this industry as talent anymore. Because at this point in our lives, as like mature adults who want to make like decisions, if you notice, in the world based on our internal philosophy, we aren't here if you're a young kid who, like Harry's the best example because he's so young compared to the rest of us. Of course, he doesn't know what the fuck's going on in the world or politics. So to him, it's just like, I just love CSGO. Can I do the event? That he's going to have the easiest conditions to work the events. If we're at the point in our careers where now it has to be like, I have to like morally approve of the company, and then spoiler, we're going to get automatically selected out of the system.
We have added a few more caveats to our ability to work in the industry, to be fair. Like
No, but the point is, I think it's the same thing somewhere. To me, it is a young man's business. Like, the problem with this industry, and it's logical if you think about it, since it's an industry that by default loses money right now, it's all about tricking dreamers and young people who do it for less and people who are willing to take worse conditions. That right now, that's just the phase we're in the industry. Like, for people like me and you, our problem is we would be best suited in like the sweet spot in like 20 years when like the monetization's there and things are stabilized. And at that point, it's like you get paid just for quality. So if you're some like big figure or big name, you can have your own little gig on the side. Right now, it's just fucking hustling, mate. It's all just grinding, hustling, working for fuck all. It is just like that across the industry.
Especially when
players and talent and everyone.
Through another recession, and it's going to get even more competitive.
It's going to tighten the belt even more. Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
You may see, I could predict that you're going to see actually quite a few of the tier 1 talent start to get dropped out in favor of other new and up and coming talent. The reason why is you're probably going to be able to pay those up and comers half as much, if not less. Right. And so when it comes time for the companies to start really cutting corners and trying to figure out how to pinch every penny because the advertising's all dried up because it's a fucking recession, that's also probably going to be a big hit that you're going to see across the tier 1 talent. And you're already seeing it now in a sense. There's a lot of pressure on salaries or on day rates already as it stands, and I think that's just going to get worse. So that's yet another thing added onto it. But you're right, like, dude, it was a totally different scenario 8 years ago. I was just thinking about that, right? That man, there was that video that's been going around lately, man, dude. I haven't had a nostalgia hit that hard.
Oh, the CSGO one that I posted the other day.
The CSGO one, holy shit, dude, that was. Whoa, right in the field.
It's here's what that one managed to do that other videos like that didn't nail. You can tell that guy actually was there for those years, because it wasn't even that he didn't just put like me in War Owl. He had like a load of like smaller memes and little references that you don't even really know if you did play matchmaking back in the day and all that shit.
That was such a good video, but it's also like
the atmosphere.
That was peak. Because we were just traveling. Yes. We lived out of suitcases for months. It was like, what's happening next? We need to be on the road. What's the next event? Also, that was a period of time where you didn't even necessarily know if you were working the next event. So when the offer came, you snapped up and said, yes, okay. There weren't any long-term deals yet. So it was all just like one day to the next. What are you doing? What event to the next? But you would spend most of the year on the road, and that was just part of it. And it was like peak Counter-Strike where you're just living the game and the community every day. That's it. That's all it is. Not so today. And so it's just a different field. It's just changed in that sense. It's a bit weird, but yeah, to I guess to wrangle it back over to Frankie, it really there's the so hard to be a woman thing. I don't know.
Here's the thing. I wasn't trying to make like a big abstract part on that. We've obviously discussed this topic today. I just thought
we have. We don't need to get into it again. It was just one of those. it was just one of those like comments. I think it was in Reddit. I don't know. Scrolling through the comments just to see after the award shows and all that. And one of the comments in there was just like, "Hey, I'm a it's like I'm an ESEA main guy. I play at a higher rating than all of the female players. I would love to get a salary. Can I get a salary? And I'm just like, well, I mean, there is a way. It's verboten to say it, but there is a way. I'm sure you can figure it out. But well, that's our Frankie update, I guess. So. It is definitely one of those things. It's a young person industry who doesn't have a lot of responsibilities. If that's the position that you're in, then you need to go pedal to the metal. You go all in, and you get in, and you start rocking it up. As soon as you have things that start to get in the way of that, it's going to become that much more difficult to be competitive with guys who don't and who are also willing to work for a lower day rate. It's a competitive industry for sure.
It's why, by the way, as an aside, I find some of the most worthless discussions or discourses in esports. The one where every year or two, Semmler, a load of people in the industry just go, no one should work for free in esports ever. And that whole thing just rears its head again. The reason why that's such a worthless discussion is because remember the mechanism we're talking about now. We're talking about the person who has the least relevance to the industry and how they get paid, right? That person cannot call their own shot by definition. And if you don't take that, say you're the person who comes along and you're applying to be a no-name news poster, just your first ever talent gig. The point is, if you say, I won't do it for free, there is a million guys lined up who are like, wait, can I get in? Can I have a go? So that's why to me, esports is such a silly industry, because people at the top of the industry, notice, by the way, this is a metaphor for politics, talk about the people who are at the bottom of the thing as if you can just all choose to change how things are. Like, that'd be like me in society, Semmler, being like, you know what? No woman should ever have to work 2 jobs all night long. But what does that help the woman at the bottom who has no money? She's going to take the gig, isn't she? Like, she's not going to go, you're right, I shouldn't take the second job at a fucking laundrette.
This is a much bigger argument.
No, but that's my point.
This is the argument against minimum wage. And why minimum wage is actually one of the most damaging laws ever introduced for anybody trying to get their foot on the ladder and actually try to get a job and work their way up and gain skills and all of that. Minimum wage destroys all of them. It perpetuates poverty. But
I mean, it's the same topic basically, because by definition, think about it. If legally you set the amount I can legally pay here, well, now I'm just going to get an illegal person to work for less, aren't I? Like, it's actually, the joke is you are actually incentivizing that. You're not stopping it and going, well, no, don't do that. You're actually incentivizing that. What you're saying is, it's like the UFC. Here's the best analogy ever, Semmler. In theory, the UFC doesn't like any type of steroids being taken. That's a lie. They love it when you take them, succeed, don't get caught, win the fight, and look at the best fighter ever. So the real joke of the UFC is just don't get caught. Obviously, we don't say do it, but just don't get caught. Like, that's the real law of the UFC. It's the same, by the way, spoiler, it's the same with cheating in Counter-Strike. Like, they don't really want to have to kick you out. They'd rather you just get away with it. So,
in almost all of these cases.
In fact, the joke was all those years ago when that Kaylee shit went down and all the flusher stuff at that same major during 2014, that was for real, guys, the vibe I got from the Valve devs. It wasn't like, oh, if these guys have cheated, like, I'll nail them, don't worry. Or I know these guys didn't cheat. The actual vibe I got from the Valve devs was like, it's going to be really annoying if I have to somehow ban this guy. Like, what? That's the weird. Now you've made it about yourself, you fucking narcissistic twat. Like, if the guy's a top pro player and he's cheating, can we just get rid of him? Why are you making it like, I wouldn't want to have to, don't show me it.
You know why?
Like, what are you talking about?
You remember why? You remember why? It's just because they want to be as little involved as possible.
Oh, of course.
In every way, and they also want to just keep making mountains of money.
Yep.
Remember the extent they had to go to before they started actually acting on some of these trade bots and all these and some of these gambling websites and stuff like that. Like they actually had like it was actually like. What was it? Actual senators or some shit that actually started to come after them and start to say like, "Hey, we're going to start looking at you pretty closely here unless you do something." And then Valve were like, "Fine, okay, fine, I guess." And then they do like the one thing that kind of looks like they did something. I mean, they did take Lounge out of the picture, but I mean, like it's still like that. Those sorts of things are still happening. Oh. But they do whatever it is that they need to do and then move on. And that's why we're never seeing our power again, right? It's just like throw the book at them. We acted. Richard had to bend over backwards and do triple backflips and do everything possible to make it happen. He made it happen. We did the thing, and now we're out again. Like, do not bother us again. We just want to make money. Which just about says it all about Valve, right? Like that's pretty much the state of it, state of affairs for them. But
what's our topic? What's the first topic?
That's like any starting industry. That's really how it should be in terms of competition.
Yeah, of course. Because the whole point is the initial industry is just about finding good people. It's not about things like take care of them, pay them. You do all that later when that's a luxury to be able to pay people well and to give them special perks.
Foot in the door. It's this idea that for starting positions you should be able to make living wages. It's like
Oh, it's stupid as fucking.
You're getting experience. You're getting.
My analogy
sure,
for
get
that.
paid, but like you're not going to get paid mountains of cash. You're going to get
No,
paid.
because here's the problem, Semmler. What they're mistaken is this. This isn't any old job. You can go tomorrow and work at McDonald's and get a living wage. The point is, you're going to do a boring job working at McDonald's. Or would you like to get less than McDonald's, but work your dream job and maybe turn it into your ultimate dream job, like dream job and get paid dream money? That's why it's so stupid to treat it like it's a job market. It isn't. It's a talent selection system. And if you aren't good enough, by the way, it doesn't matter what your choice is, you'll never make it. So you can do whatever you want, right? Let's jump into the actual topics then. What's like a topic you wanted to do for this show? What did you have in mind? What's happened recently?
Well, do we just go out and go in guns blazing? I guess we could just get into the Astralis a bit right off the bat.
What the fact that device is playing again? What we doing here?
Well, there is the device that was playing again, but did you? I mean, come on, have you not been on social media at all?
Oh, you mean the Yagcore thing? I didn't know you meant Astralis by that. Like, to me, I don't really think of that. When you say Astralis, I think of the team. You mean the
fair enough. Sure. The Astralis CSGO team. That we can definitely talk about device because Play.gg have been killing it. They've been doing a great job. They kind of like filling. It looks like they're kind of filling that gap that Jackson had going there, but they're just cranking out article after article right now on CS:GO. And there was a really good interview with Device. Quite a few questions, trying to get in on how he felt about the team, how he felt coming back. I mean, it's a lot of the. Device is a trained, he knows how to handle social media. He knows how to handle these interviews now. It's very kind of the kind of answers you'd expect from him where he feels like he's put in the work. Now it's about, easing in, just, not expecting too much, not expecting not to do anything in this first tournament back, but like not expecting to do too much either. He's not looking to take over the world, but he feels comfortable. He feels comfortable with familiar faces around him. He feels happy being back in Astralis. The goal was to come back to Astralis. What was interesting though, he mentions in this interview where he says that it was even a question of whether he came back to CSGO at all because he had a lot of options outside of CSGO as well. So like we could have been in a realm where Device just stepping away completely after that break and saying like I'm out. But I guess the offer from Astralis comes in and that's like the perfect project that he was looking for because he's making it sound like in this interview he wanted to be with Astralis all along and once Astralis made the offer then he was willing to come back to Counter-Strike because it was with them.
As in, are you implying he would just retire, or that maybe he would go to Valorant?
No, but that's what I'm taking away from what he said, where he said there was a lot of other options open to him outside of esports. I was like, oh, I never even considered. I thought maybe Device would take more time or whatever, but like it never crossed my mind that he would step away for good. It's such a weird thing. It kind of catches you flat-footed because I mean, you really think Device he isn't old yet, and he's
but that's actually one thing. Here's what's mad. This will be an unpopular take, but as fucked up as the things he said were, like I don't agree with the sentiment at all, even though I sort of know what he meant. When he made all those silly comments when he joined NIP in that first vlog, like day one of joining the team that got him in all the trouble, where he said like that they're 5 steps ahead of Astralis's system and all that jazz. As much as like I think he was totally wrong to say that, and I even think he did sort of try to cash in immediately on his fucking former teammates' success to build up his new team. I actually liked that he had that attitude, at least Semmler, because what it implied to me, if you remember, he also said the reason to join NIP was to try and be the #1 player of the year. That's a really good sign because the point Device is at in his career, 99.999% of people to ever be at that point would just have no motivation for anything. They've won all the majors. They've won all the MVPs. Remember, at one point, somebody had all these records. He has the most majors won still. He has the most major MVPs tied with Cold Ziritzer. He did used to have the most MVPs before Simple finally. This guy at one point around the time when he joined NIP could have just said, I retire. It's over. Unless I think I can be the best again. I've done everything in my CSGO career. By the way, no one's even going to catch those records. Like CSGO would probably have to keep going for 10 more years for someone to catch it. Even then, they'd have to be in the best team ever. So actually, as fucked up as it is, when he joined NIP, I was just glad he at least had some fire left. Like he had something else he wanted to accomplish, a new challenge. So in a sense, it's actually a good sign that, like, even though I don't like the fact Astralis is going to be a semi-shit lineup for the first 6 months, at least he has some reason to keep playing, mate. Because even though I'm different, like I will just keep doing whatever I do a long time. A lot of people, a few years in, it's like you were saying, a few years in, that's a career, mate. In esports, 3, 4, 5 years can be your whole career. Like, even though in sports sense it'd be very young to retire, in the context of what he's accomplished in esports, this would actually be a perfectly reasonable time to retire.
Norbert joke, isn't it? The speed run. Come in, win in the 7 months, move on. It's like, okay. I mean, hopefully that's not the end of his career, obviously. Hopefully he's going to still be in the mix. But
I mean,
you know,
wait, you say that, Semmler. You're just saying that to be nice. You don't give a flying fuck.
No, I
don't. I know, exactly. You just said that like, oh, and hopefully, good luck to him. The show wishes him well. Like, we don't. No, but no offense, mate, but I don't know you from Adam, mate. Like, you're just a fucking guy. I actually can't believe still, Norbert, but you won a major. I can't believe it, mate.
It still blows my mind that we're
the idea Guardian will retire, no majors, and you've got a major. Nah, you know what? But this is even worse. I'm going to go further than Sam. I wish I could take your major off you and give it to Guardian. There you go. How about that? He's irrelevant now, mate. Don't worry. He's never coming back.
Dude, that is like, this actually kind of does play into that whole thing that we were talking about last time as well, about, the new generation of players and having to like drum up interest in, and unless there's some kind of dominant freak player like Mondesi, where you're like, okay, this is interesting, this is cool, let's see where this goes. If it's anybody else now, like of a new generation who isn't some kind of like dominant player or some kind of master IGL or something along those lines, it's like, you really got to give me something to be interested now. Because like Norbert,
oh, for sure. Like all Norbert does is fill a seat. Exactly. Yeah. There's nothing to talk about, nothing to write home about, is it? It's just whatever. Yeah.
But I mean, it's like you say, like there is going to be this period at the beginning of the year, though.
It's like that meme, isn't it? You know that meme, Semmler, where it's like, you get the outsiders team that won the major. You're like Jim, one of the like unique, idiosyncratic, but in his own way, maybe idiot, savant, genius, IGL AWPers. Then of course you've got fucking Fame, one of the rising talents of World Counter-Strike, set to become maybe the next Electronic. Then you keep going. Who else have you got? Kicker, long-time teammate of Jim, playing a sort of fill-in role at this point in his career. Then you have Flit, the monster rifler who was being groomed to be a part of Na'Vi, but instead ends up in this route. Not you, Norbert. And then you go to like the next, and then Dastan, the coach, and it's just like that, isn't it? Like, he gets nothing. Like, the bad thing is, Semmler, even him winning a major didn't in my brain like put his stock up even like 0.01 iota. Like, I just don't care at all. Like, I know it's fucked up. I just don't care. I just don't.
Dude, it is the truth. You feel bad for saying it, but at the same time, it's like,
it's true. It's just true.
I'm sorry, dude. But congratulations on the major. Still, I mean, that is the thing. Like, you did speed run it. Congratulations. Going to be on like Awesome Games Done Quicker, whatever the fuck that speed running stream is. But like, it's good to hear that the device is back in the mix. It's good to hear that he seems to like actually be in a good headspace now. He seems to be in control of his faculties, and he seems to have a game plan as to how he wants to approach the season. It really does look like they're managing expectations. Another point that he brought up and that I really liked to hear is that he says that he's not really involved with social media at all, and so he's not really he's not really aware of what's going on in the social media landscape. Which again, great. Just isolate yourself. Focus on the game, focus on your job, focus on your team. Let the rest happen. It doesn't matter. You don't like. That's probably one of the big takeaways that he's had over the past couple of years. Now is just if you can find a way to isolate yourself from the social media, apart from exactly what precisely you need to be a part of. If you can ignore the rest and still do your job to the utmost, fantastic. There you go. You're good. So it seems like he's matured after this 2-year period, and he's actually going to be able to potentially do some work, because at least from what we've seen so far, him and Blame F seem to vibe well. They seem to get along just fine, and they're dropping some good numbers themselves. So now it's a question of the rest of the team, Guardian, Zipnix, how this Buzz guy shapes up.
Glaive, you said Guardian, but you meant Glaive.
My bad. Yeah. Glaive, obviously, Zipnix, and then Buzz.
Yeah.
Buzz. But Buzz, I just think Buzz Lightyear. It's easy. Oh, that one, come on, like, voice. But like, dude, that point actually of whether or not this team is going to be shit for 6 months. Well, I mean, don't you think that right now in the current landscape of things, everybody's going to kind of have that potential to be shit in the next?
They're going to be worse, mate. They're going to be
worse. FaZe stand-in. We don't know for how long.
Yeah, but the rumor is it might be config, mate.
Yeah, well,
if it's config,
that is the
by the way,
one that you can
there's
think
a story.
The only player you can think of that could fill that spot.
Here's my problem, though. One, that's a dreamer, man. I've always said I always wanted config to have Carrigan as his IGL. I think he would just be the guy who would make him the best player he could be. But it's what's fucked up. Not only could that be good for FaZe, like they could potentially win tournaments still. How fucked up is that on the config angle, though, Semmler? Here's your punishment for fucking the team and wrecking us for all the stickers and the major.
#1 team in the world.
We are going to release you, and you get to stand in to become possibly one day a full-time member of the best team in the world. What's that? Like, what punishment is that? You know what I mean? Like,
fair, Duncan. Why are you looking for fair? Why are you looking for this? It's just
because sadly that's my mistake. You know what the biggest problem ever is, Semmler? It's that even though I understand, if I inherently know the world is corrupt and people have fallen and they're all wrong, I still always naively think like, but they're supposed to tell the truth and do the right thing. I'm naive like that, mate. The whole show, the joke is by the numbers has basically been like a fucking like 7-year intervention of Richard Lewis trying to explain that like they're all corrupt, Thorin. They're just lying, like, but they're not allowed to do that, Rich. It's like, well, they're doing it, aren't they? Like, oh, you can't keep getting away with it. They can, Thorin. I've told you for the last 7 years. They can't keep getting exactly. It's just me never
and
learning.
they will keep getting away with it.
Bang my head against the wall.
Too.
Exactly.
Like, okay, I could fill that role. We could definitely work together on that front because I mean, dude, it really is that. It's just there is no fair. Expect no justice in this life. It's all going to kind of happen in the next. But for
about the speech that you give to all the young guys joining Astralis. You just say that, you go, look, there's going to be no justice and fairness in life. We're all going to be used and spit out by the machine. And in the end, no one will remember us. Anyway, your first game's on Thursday. You're playing Zipnix at spots. Like, sound all right?
And after it. And then you got Lucky and Bubsky and all the others looking in. Can we come back in, please? No, sorry, you're not allowed.
By the way, think how dirty that is as well. No one does think this through. Because Astralis spent all that time telling you they were going to have up to a 10-man roster, it cocks you even harder when you join and they just bench you and you never play again. Like, it makes it look even stupider, doesn't it? It looks like they just don't even think you're good enough to be on a 10-man roster. Like, so whack at it.
Talk about speed running careers. Bubsky, he's just doing well.
That's so sad, isn't it? I know.
It's just brutal because it's not like he was particularly bad either. It's just that I guess he was never a part of the game plan for Astralis. But to
he wasn't even vaguely bad. Remember,
to find a team afterwards to put him in a position where he is obviously going to struggle to shine. He then does shine, but you bench him anyway, and then you put him in a position where he just can't get picked up by any other team because you're probably asking for an outrageous buyout. And so what? And then he becomes a broadcaster. There you go. End of his career.
But that's the problem.
Is that really how this is going to go?
As far as I know, they already bought him to sell him. So the problem was that the whole time they were just trying to sell for the highest price, weren't they? Because, the dirtiest thing is, people forget that detail as well. I will remind people of this. The dirtiest thing they did was use Bobsky to qualify for that PGL Stockholm major and then say, you're benched, mate, bring the fucking lucky guy in. No, it was Glaive or someone came back like, the fuck? Like, I qualified. Like, that's the sickest thing of all. Think of Bobsky, by the way. Remember, before the majors, he was at the tier 2 level. He never got a chance to play majors. So when he actually qualifies to a major, would have been the only major of his career. He never even got to play it because Astralis was like, well, even though, by the way, we're not even going to do anything at this major, let's just take a bad PR angle and fuck you in your face. like, great, brilliant.
Well, dude, speaking of PR, that's I mean, they show once again their true colors.
Oh, this is amazing. This
head of communications.
I'll tell everyone the basic detail. What happened was Yanko made a tweet where, in passing, he just mentioned that like Astralis is a shit org, which was the words he used. And so Steen Lawson, who is the director of communications for Astralis, and before that used to, I think, do the same role for Refresh actually when he was with like
he's one of the OG guys from
because if you remember, that was when we first said it was on the Blast side, I'm pretty sure. And for some weird reason, even though his job, guys, I'll just reinstate that for you, is director of communications, his one blind spot appears to be communicating over the internet, because when Yanko called it a shit org, this guy's tried to come at Yanko's head, and he hasn't just done it like, don't say things about my org, please, which would be whatever. You could take that angle. His whole angle was he tried to bluff Yanko and imply that he could, like, if Yanko's going to, like, you know, imply that Astralis is shit, then he could tell stories as well. I assume, by the way, pure speculation, he just means FaZe clan has a bunch of shady stories, which Yanko used to work with. That would even be obvious. I don't know what that would have to do with Yanko. But his mistake was this, Semmler. His mistake is Yanko isn't some American guy who cares about optics. So Yanko just called his bluff, and Yanko just said, like, well, I'm a pretty transparent guy. Just tell whatever stories you want. So when this guy had his bluff called, and he now has to produce the stories, he just goes like, I never would, and then just backs off like. And so the man is far, but and also, just as an aside, this is how dumb he is, right? Remember, director of communications, because it was just by the way, this tweet Yanko made wasn't going viral. It was just a throwaway tweet, like a passing tweet. But because this idiot engaged with it in this like vitriolic manner, the tweet got way more attention because it became the drama of the day. And even people like Richard would just comment at this guy's head. And so as a result, this guy has ended up just absolutely like humiliated and embarrassed in front of everyone. It's so silly because it wasn't even necessary. Like, it's just another classic one of those ones that you get every 6 months where a pro player or a big industry figure just gets sort of insulted that someone can dare tweet about them, you know, like, that's just going to happen, I'm afraid. It's just the world. It was hilarious though. I did laugh quite a lot though. It was funny.
Oh, dude,
you
I
like
was
you had to have loved
laughing.
my tweet as well. You know the one where I did that like meme where they're at the party because since that guy was like, I could leak all the stories, but I
Yes,
never
dude,
will.
I retweeted
so,
that one. I
So
was
I just did one
fucking
where it was
howling.
everyone knows the famous meme where they're all at that party and they're all stick figures and there's that guy in the
gotta
corner
find
like they don't even know that I'm so and so. I just did that meme, but what I did was I put the two people dancing with girls as Yanko and Nico as though it was like an after party, and then the Steen guy's just in like a corner and he's just thinking in his thought bubble like, I could tell stories about this after party later, but I never will. Because that's like that's his angle. I thought that was cool or something. It's so, dude, it was just so embarrassing, the whole Twitter debacle. Come on.
Yeah,
I
dude.
almost felt bad for him and I despise that guy.
That is actually the thing where you're just like, holy shit, and he just keeps going. He just keeps digging deeper. Stop with the shovel. Stop it. Just leave the social media alone. Step away. Go communicate elsewhere. Go work on some Astralis PR thing or some bullshit. Like, holy fuck. And then Richard jumps in as well. And just like,
anytime Richard comes in, I love it. It's like the fucking, it's like when like, what do you call it? Fucking, it's like Zorro just coming in or something, fucking everyone up, isn't it? You're just waiting for that moment. Just him to swing in, just start fucking everyone up. I know.
he just comes in from the top rope. And this guy just doesn't. I mean, he's got nothing. He's got nothing at that point. And the problem is that he's had nothing since the beginning. That's really. So it really is a question. Like,
Think of
you
it
just
as a
need somebody
personality,
to-
by the way. That is actually who Richard would be as well. He would just be like Stone Cold Steve Austin, wouldn't he? Like, you know, at the moment there's a fight going on. It's like it's Yanko, the Serbian, you know, analyzer versus Steen Lawson, director of communications. He's got all like fucking old Nokia brick phones on him. And then, listen, in the middle of when they're having this fight, all of a sudden you just hear, like, that's why it'd be Richard, because you'd have to have that music. Oh my God, is that Richard Lewis? He just comes running up with his 2 and what should be the 3rd Esports Journalist of the Year award.
there you go.
There you go.
And it uses that. I mean, do you remember that? Fuck, I'm not going to be able to remember the name of it. Do you remember that off of Adult? It was before Adult Swim, I think. Nickelodeon, maybe? Late
I know what
night?
you're talking about. You're talking
You know
about
what I'm talking
Celebrity
about? The wax
Deathmatch.
figure wrestling,
Yeah.
where it was they just died in the most
No,
gory
plastic, you
fashion.
mean. It was Celebrity Deathmatch, it was called.
Celebrity Deathmatch.
And it would be
that's
famous
exactly.
people. Like it would be like the joke is there was one where, if you remember when Seinfeld got cancelled because like Jerry Seinfeld said he didn't want to do it anymore. Well, the joke was, if you remember, Semmler, because it was at like Friends status, that show, it was where like they were going to pay like every member like, you know, 20 million to do the next season. And then Seinfeld himself was just like, I think I've had enough of it. And you can tell the rest of them were all just like eager to be like, yeah, let's do it. Oh no, yeah, we're all fine with it. So there was one I remember where it was like Seinfeld versus all the other members of Seinfeld. That was like the Celebrity Deathmatch. Because obviously the joke is they're all hating him, aren't they? They're all like, oh, thanks, Jerry. Bloody hell.
Fuck, yeah, of course. Yeah, that's the whole. I mean, that is just the. I could imagine that sort of thing where
That was some
Richard coming
primo
in
drama though. Like, my
mauling
only hope is this. I just hope there is going to be a video where Richard addresses it on stream, because you'll make it even funnier. You know, it'll be even funnier if he does.
Please, he's probably gonna make a video about it. I mean, he's been on fire lately with the videos. Richard, he's been just
he's
cranking
killing
out
it.
content. I really enjoyed.
stream is
I'm
mega now.
halfway through the last Four Horsemen podcast with Tommy as well, and that's gold. If
Yep.
any of you want some deep insight, it's really nice. It's nice when you have Tommy on online, because he is so tied into, let's say, the North American real progressive style of doing business in esports. Where it's like, well, you know, if you're not deep enough in the red, you're not taking enough risk and all that sort of thing. You know, it's just basically like on this one, I side with Richard, where Richard's over here talking about how people are taking too much risk and need to rein it back and be a bit more responsible with their spending and all of that. And then you got Tommy over there being like, well, there's different models going on here. There's different teams, but really, you know, investors are looking at you and saying, well, if you're making profit, then you're clearly not taking enough risk. So spend some more money. It's just like, which side is it, esports man? Which direction are you going? Like
which
that
way?
meme at the
Which way,
crossroads?
Western Man or whatever? Yeah, exactly.
Which side?
Exactly.
Which way, esports man? And we're about to. I mean, I guess we're gonna find out again here. You know, it's gonna be another 2008. So we're gonna see. You know, like who's actually got the staying power to make it through on a business model. But that is a very good podcast to go and listen to if you guys are interested in the topic of the actual business of esports, because Tommy's got excellent insight, and of course, you know, you're there with Richard, and Monty, of course, as well, has got a lot of experience on that side as well. So it was really good stuff.
The only
So, highly
downside I
recommend.
would say is that was an example of a podcast where the problem Lurpus has is because he is super deep embedded within the finance world, he does drop a lot of terminology and lingo. Like if you notice, I like every now and then try to jump in, like MG means like minimum guarantee, because unfortunately I know what he means by that, but that might just fly over a lot of people's heads. So if you can sort of cue into the terminology, there's actually like some mad depth he goes into on some of the things. Yeah, I agree. A lot of insights actually.
It's
I learned a lot
excellent.
from that episode. Yeah.
And it really, I mean, it does put things in perspective for you. He made a couple of points. I was like, I hadn't heard that before. Okay, fair enough. It's where you have to, if you go at it with an open mind, you can take a lot out of that.
It's like that's one thing that annoys me about being a journalist, mate. People always act like I'm pretending I'm like the genius that knows everything. No, the reason I know things about business and esports that you, a fan, don't is I'm friends with like Jack Etienne and fucking Ocelot and all these people who are like embedded right in this Lurpus. Like I don't have to wait for them to tell me something. I can just go ask them a question. Why'd you do this? What does this cost? Like the point is when that happens, by the way, I'm the beginner. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'll let them explain to me what's going on. Then I go and verify independently. And that's how you come to an understanding. So all my understanding of things like business is purely like, I would say practical. Like I've learned it on the fly for things that made sense. I've tried to like observe things. So I think, because people sadly always act like me and Richard are just pretending like we would just fucking came out the womb knowing everything. We don't. We just have way better connections than most people. That's a pretty good fucking superpower, by the way. Being able to contact anybody you want to get whatever info you off them. That'll make you look like a genius. I am right this many times for good reason. No, whatever.
Well, that is actually one of those hardcore nostalgia trips from that New Year's party that we had recently that reminded me of like old DreamHack parties, because that was it. It was just the connections, talking to people, meeting all sorts of different people from all sorts of different walks in the industry, from marketing, from like you could meet marketers, you could meet brand ambassadors, you could meet tournament organizers, team owners, players, just everybody from all sorts of different sides of it. It was always so much fun. And that's one of those elements that may be lost unless you're actually like already made those contacts, and so you can stay in touch online, or you're reaching out, cold calling them. I guess I don't know how you do it now. You'd have to go to some convention or something like that, and even going to conventions. I mean, DreamHack was the one. All right, so there was another team actually. Okay, so now we can pivot a little bit into another semi-Danish team at least. But this was it's nice to get confirmation of let's say a hypothesis that we had going into this team to begin with, in that vitality when they were first put together, Danish, French. You're sitting here going, obviously communication is going to be an issue. You're talking about two different teams that are now going to have to speak in a second tongue, because the one side always spoke in Danish, the other side always spoke in French. Now they have to come together and speak in English. This is not going to be easy. This is going to take quite a bit of work, quite a bit of effort on their part, and it's going to hurt. And great interview. Also, by the way, I have to do a quick, have to quickly add, it was Blix.gg for the device interview. The Zywoo one is play.gg. But both of them are cranking out good content, so I'll give them a gander. But this what was interesting about this Zywoo one was again, he just comes out and says it. He doesn't beat around the bush. He says, yeah, communication has been a massive problem. Things radically improved when Spinks joined, because he's been comming in English primarily for a long time now.
That makes sense.
And so when he joined in the roster, that cleared a lot of the comms up, because Zywoo himself was saying, I already don't comm that much. And so when I do comm in French, it's instant. But in English, it's taking a second and a half, 2 seconds, which makes things pretty difficult sometimes when you're trying to really hit a snappy move and you can't get the words out, which, I mean, writing was on the wall. We always knew that was going to be a major issue for these players. It's just nice to see that Zywoo in an interview is actually clearing that up and making it very clear that, yes, communication was a big issue with the team, but that it seems to be improving. And so perhaps we can see vitality.
Fair play for even admitting it, though, because a lot of people, bearing in mind this project is going to be international for the foreseeable future, a lot of people would only say that, Semmler, if they were like angling to manipulate the org to go back to French or something, because essentially your superstar player is sort of saying, I'm not quite as good right now at comming because I have to do it in another language. But I don't think he's doing that. Like, having read a lot of Zywoo interviews, I do think he's quite an earnest person, and I don't think there's any subterfuge there. I think he genuinely is just actually admitting that it's actually been harder than he thought it would be. Because the main problem always is this. This is why I always reference, people who watch my shows will know this, I always reference a line that Yanko told me when I did my reflections with him like 2 years ago. Yanko had the best line for it for when Nico was having to IGL in English. His point was, because obviously this is where me and Yanko disagree, I think Nico as an IGL is a bit overrated. I don't think he's bad. I just don't think he's anywhere near the level of the Carragans of the world, etc. Whereas Yanko rather does think Nico could be like as good an IGL as you need. So Yanko's explanation of of why it didn't work in FaZe, where they're all speaking second language English, is he said this line. It's a great fucking line. Remember this one, it's a banger. He said that the right call, but made like a second late, becomes the wrong call. That is such a fucking great way to phrase it. Because the point he's making there is, it's not that Ziwu doesn't know what to say in English, or how to speak in English, or how to understand English. It's just that every little piece of lag, whether that's understanding fully what was said, whether that's formulating what you want to say, whether that's like even having time to say something after that's the problem. That they might all even be saying amazing comms. Remember, like Ziwu's a very intelligent player by the looks of it. Magus and Dupree are some of the greatest players of all time, clearly very cerebral players in the game. Like, I don't think these people are idiots. I think the problem is that's the issue of communication, literally not being able to get the info fast enough or enough across, or it's getting broken up in some ways, or it's delaying your superstar player from making a rotation or a move or something. I can totally see how that would be the case. Like, I feel for him in that regard. Like, the problem is I think everyone underestimates how hard it's going to be really good, essentially to be as good and speak in a different language. I think it's always going to cost a little something. That's why, to me, the best opportunities are Vitality and FaZe. It's like, the reason we're gambling on not speaking our language is to get even better teammates, hopefully. So my problem in Vitality is, like, a lot of these problems go away if the Spinks just plays better, if Dupree gets his shit together. Like, if they just play better, it won't be as big an issue.
Well, I think that's where they got most of their success in the past. If they've gotten any success with Vitality in the past, is in this mixed sort of format, it's when the players overperformed and really came together and just, we're hitting all the shots. And then at that point, yeah, sure, it gets easy. That's 100% a thing. But it's like, how with considering already this kind of handicap that they're playing with, admittedly, it's getting better. They have the firepower. They made the move to get Spinks on. They're getting better firepower, all that. I'm still curious to see where they shape up, if they can stop G2 from taking over the first 3 or 4 months of this year. Because again, you got to keep harping on it, but it really is one of those weird situations where many of the top teams are not playing with their full 5-man roster. Granted, sure, like you say, FaZe, they could be bringing Config on board. It is worth mentioning that Lewis Mira actually added, he did a quote tweet on this FaZe Clan tweet saying that Rain, who's expecting his first child, so congratulations, Rain, and obviously hope that everything goes well. But that Rain, he's taking a break at the beginning of the year here for to be with family, and so FaZe isn't going to have their full roster at this Blast Spring. Louis Mira, he actually adds FaZe registered Olafmeister as a sub for the Blast group several weeks ago, but he has been out of action for a year now. Config was registered as a sub by Heroic.
Ooh. Because of the previous standing scenario.
Because of the previous standing situation, but it really makes you wonder, is that like, is that why you would think that if it was registered weeks ago, we would have this news weeks ago? Yes. So are they trying to pull some kind of last minute switcheroo, trying to get Blast to let them have Config, like pay Heroic some money or whatever to get Config off of their sub list and get them as a stand-in? I wonder what's going on there. If this is some last second wheeling and dealing coming in from FaZe and Heroic and Blast trying to make this kind of shift happen, if the subs are already in, you would think that the sub roster, like the rosters, if you have your subs, if you have everything in, then that's it. Your rosters are locked in for the tournament. So it would, I think, come down to Blast, whether Blast agree with making a change like this or not.
Yeah, the problem with that one is, I'm not certain this is one of those ones where Richard would be the ideal person to know. You have to essentially know how the roster rules work within like that document. The teams get to know whether there's a dispensation they can make and they can get. So who the fuck knows? Because the problem on this one, Semmler, is this. In theory, when it's something like that, like birth of a child, family member dies, sometimes they even will let you do the emergency sub on that one, So if they just said, no, but Olaf isn't available and Config isn't playing for Heroic, they might, for PR reasons, just let you do it still. I don't know actually on that one. Because the problem is the way you're describing it actually sounds like Config shouldn't be allowed to play if he's registered as someone else. Like, there's got to be a roster lock, right? Must be soon. Must be now in theory, right? So yeah, I don't know on that one, mate.
You would think. That's why I'm kind of wondering, like, what? I guess poor Blast. They're just gonna get the shaft. They're gonna As usual, they're just going to get the shaft. They're going to have FaZe, who don't have a full roster. They may not even have a winning roster if they have to scramble to bring Olafmeister in. Maybe that explains why Olafmeister has been streaming so much. Just trying to get some stacks and just trying to get some server time in Face It, just to get to at least a halfway decent shape going into this, if he does have to stand in as the 5th man. Fortunately, it's Copenhagen, so it's an hour flight away from Stockholm, so it's not like he's got to fly, to the end of the earth to get there if they do need him, if they do get him. But Like Blast just can't catch a break because you got FaZe who are in this situation. You got Navi who are bringing in a new guy as well, NPL. So they're not going to be up to full strength. I mean, it's just Astralis as well with Buzz. So even with Astralis coming in, you're not really sure what level they're going to be at. Vitality, are they going to hit the ground running, or are they going to be struggling a little bit? G2 as well. Like, it's the first tournament of the year, so who's going to be shaking off the rust. It makes you wonder what kind of level, like what kind of storylines you're going to be able to build going into this tournament, considering the state of things.
Here's why they're fucked, Semmler. Because not only, like, as you're saying, do they have all these rosters that just aren't like top quality rosters that are going to give the best level of play. Then you add in how the year ended. Remember, they didn't get Astralis for Blast 4, which ruined the crowd. Then for the World Final, the Heroic, who just won their 4 finals, don't even take the real lineup. And then on top of that, remember, because of the way the Blast circuit works, here's 2 teams you don't see in their groups. Notice you don't see ENCE or Outsiders. Outsiders are the world champions, guys, and ENCE is a top team. Like, they're just not in their Blast partner thing. So the problem they have all in all, and remember, there's no Cloud9 there either. Like, dude, that Blast now, that's why I told you, they've actually gotten fucked over. Because if everything was perfect, Blast might actually be the best circuit. Like, their tournaments are always like super sturdy format, like all the best, but they don't get all the best teams is the problem. Whereas because ESL does like world ESL rankings plus the tournament's enormous, they just always get all the good names. Like, yeah, again, Blast's going to get completely scooped by Katowice. Katowice's going to have everyone in it. The joke is, in fact, that's how well ESL's screwed over Blast by convincing them this format where you play the group stage, then let our event happen. The joke is the Blast group stage is the warm-up event for Katowice now. It's not even its own tournament, is it?
I think Blast have a choice. I think it's ESL calling shots. ESL are just like, yeah, so here are the available weeks during the year. Do it with it as you will. Like, they're probably not even telling Blast, it's like, it probably is, Blast just kind of coming in there going like, okay, we're going to take up all this time, so that nobody else can come in, right? Like a Star Series or somebody. I don't even know what happened to Star Series, but if there was somebody else out there trying to run an S tier event, we play, for example, trying to run an S tier event, like, that ESL are out there. They're the ones setting the schedule. Like, this is our calendar year.
PGL just has one guy with about 1 million fucking display units. And then they're like, we can make money doing these events. Whip him harder. Yeah, no shit, you can. I bet you can make loads making that thing. What do you have to do? Just replace the guy every month. Fucking hell, ridiculous.
Fucking tragic. PGL are out of the picture. I mean, who even knows? So yeah, no, the ESL Blast dynamic. I really do think like
I know what they should do.
I
know what they should do. I've realized. Here's the move. ESL should host an ESL Impact event in Saudi Arabia, and this is the marketing angle. ESL Impact. The girls hit back.
It's a good marketing.
Good marketing angle. I don't know that it'll go down so well in Saudi Arabia.
Maybe not. Maybe not. But I like the idea.
Yeah,
maybe somewhere else. You can do that somewhere else. North America. I don't know. I'm sure they'll find. I'm sure they'll find someplace. But I mean, more of the ESL Impact. I mean, that's continuing. Obviously, HLTV gave out some awards for the female scene. There's still. I think actually Katowice is going to involve the first event of the year.
Oh, does it have a tournament there? Right, fair enough.
Pretty sure. I think they're going to play in the convention center part of because Katowice is a big convention center kind of event as well. So I think they're kicking off their year there with a convention center kind of stage.
Not even in the sport deck. Brilliant. So
no.
Not even in the ex-Soviet fucking like 70s handball tournament thing. The saddest thing about that whole thing, Semmler, is this. People will always use Katowice to meme on me, but I won that one. Katowice is the meme, not Thorin, homies. Like, the point is, this, Semmler. If it was 2017 or 2015, yeah, Katowice was a cool spot to go to. Dude, in 2023, Katowice Spodek isn't even like a top 50 arena that you'd have in esports. It's ridiculous. Like, I have to live in this world where people are going to gaslight me forever. They're going to act like that's Cowboy Stadium till I'm dead, mate. It's ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. I'm not exaggerating. Pick any NFL, NBA, and any of those stadiums. Pick the smallest NBA team stadium. It's better than the Sport Deck, I'm telling you right now. The Sport Deck's really old, guys. It's not even used for major sporting events like in soccer and stuff. Like, it's too small.
Oh,
it wouldn't work.
It's tiny. But it's but like, think about it from ESL's perspective. Again, dude, like, this is why ESL survive.
Yes.
They're so good at getting value.
Oh, smart as
just
fuck to take that
squeaking
spot.
it all
Yes.
out as best as they
Yes.
can. Go to Poland. Cheaper
Yep.
taxes, cheaper labor costs, cheaper everything, basically. So you make Katowice into the tier 1 event, into an S tier event, but all of it doesn't cost you an S tier event. It kind of cost. Same reason you go to Brazil. Definitely doesn't cost you as much there either. You're probably getting some help again from the tourism board. Cologne at this point probably cuts you a decent deal as well when you actually run that. But then again, you can sell tickets at a decent price in Cologne, and so maybe it kind of works out now that Cologne is just such a massive venue. But like, the whole idea of Katowice being some kind of like magical place to go, not quite. But they've managed to transmogrify it into an S tier event over the years, and that's really, I guess, that's what you get when you have the staying power of ESL. When you have years to work with, it's not like, oh, this is our window and we have to get it all done right now in this 6-month period, and all the growth has to happen then. Like ESL, they just think in the long game, man. They're here like, we're gonna be here for 20 years, and so we can really just build it out over time, and eventually we'll get there where we have those portions of the calendar booked without even having to worry about it. Katowice, Cologne, that's it. It's done. Then maybe you can flex around on Pro League a little bit if you want, but you really do have dominance if you're ESL at that point. You're looking good. So that on Katowice, although Katowice is, as you say, going to be the follow-up big event. That's going to be the big event because that's when it looks like FaZe may be back up to full strength, although not sure about that. It's right now they just say that it's spring. But Roban also will not be there for the spring groups for FaZe. He says that hopefully he'll be back by Katowice at the latest.
What was his reason?
Don't know. Something family related. It looks like.
I know he has kids as well. He has a wife and kids.
Yeah, he's got a family as well. So who knows? But he's not going to be able to make. He's not going to be able to make.
I'll tell you some news we forgot about that we actually should mention.
Okay.
There was that news in your native Sweden that Heaton has taken over GODSENT, and GODSENT made that Swedish lineup. You remember with all those players like Draken and fucking all the old guys, Golden. There's like a new Swedish lineup if people don't know.
The real fucked up joke is that right now, Sweden is doing its best impression of a fucking terrorist map right now. Like,
it's all like riots or some shit.
So that, funnily enough, that's where my mind went when you're like, oh, news in Sweden. I was like, what?
No, they made a lineup where the lineup is, it's all people you'll know. It's like ZTR, the guy who was, if you remember, initially with the device lineup and NIP.
Yeah.
Draken, who obviously used to be the AWPer of NIP, the guy famously had that weird thing where he would hit every 48-degree angle shot, but miss every slight twitch shot. Plopsky, who obviously was in NIP. So these are all good players so far. Then there's a few I don't know as well. There's a guy called Joel, a guy called Rusty, and then Golden is the coach, the former IGL of Fnatic. That's not a bad little core. Assuming the premise has to be Swedish, to start reintroducing the scene, that's not a bad little lineup, actually. I'll keep my eye out on that team.
No, I'm happy to support them as well, considering we've talked about this, right? How the Swedish scene has kind of let down the up and coming talent and let down the formation of the next generation of Swedish players. To see a national Swedish team get together where it's just Swedes and they're going to be building it up and giving an opportunity to some of the up and coming players like ZTR. ZTR is still one of those up and coming players, even if he has the experience.
He also actually, by the way, if you remember, he was the guy where when he was temporarily in NIP, they claimed on 2 of the maps he called instead of Hampers, because it was implied to me that he actually has IGL skills. So if you notice, he's the IGL of this team. That's an interesting angle too, because obviously if you notice, that was the first piece within Swedish Counter-Strike that fell. They lost the IGLs. That's why it was Golden himself doing it the last few years. Like, once that role left and retired, that's why they started to transition to all these international teams. Hence, Alexi B, a Finn, is the fucking IGL of NIP. So just the idea that you get a Swedish team again, it's going to be more like the French teams. It's not going to be a top team, but it could be like 23rd or something, which will be interesting. I'm just interested, not least because I will also say, even though Draken was justifiably a bit of a meme, it was always a slight bit unfair though, Semmler, because if you remember, even though it's true he would miss a lot of easy shots, he could also get quite a lot of kills though. He actually had skill. I always thought that guy clearly had some talent. He just had something weird with his mentality in the game. So I'm interested to see him. If people don't know, he went off and did Valorant for a few years. He's now back.
For a bit, he was doing some streaming.
Yeah.
But he's been back. He's been back grinding CS for a bit now. So you're right. It's if that is that kind of period out in the desert, as we've talked about in the past, where you've had your time out in the desert, essentially trying to figure out what works for you and what's keeping you motivated. If he's figured that out now, well then, yeah, he's definitely got some skills. So it could be really sick to see him back in the mix on a Swedish team, no less. And also, like you said, Heaton at the head of it. Interestingly enough, Heaton makes his return to Sweden and working with the GODSENT brand. I mean, that's a big move in and of itself. It's going to be very interesting to see what he can do. And
I think that's underrated, dude. Because here's the thing: look, it's not like he himself is going to bring in all this like revenue or anything. No, but if you're going to pick someone to be like a brand ambassador, dude, Heaton is Swedish esports and always will be. Like, I'm not even joking. After Heaton, who's even number 2, dude? What, like Reckless, like Lauder or something? Like, dude, the drop after 1 and 2 is enormous. Oh, Get Right's up there as well. But even so, like, the difference is, here's the difference, Semmler. Get Right and Forrest are Counter-Strike. Heaton is esports. There's a reason why everyone who makes an esports Hall of Fame, Heaton's first ballot every time. Like, that guy did try, even though, look, as a player, he isn't like simple. Like, he actually was slightly overrated as a player, but as a figure, he just is Counter-Strike. So to me, if you want to bring Sweden back on the map, McCown's a perfect person to get. It's not like he's going to be doing anything, but he's just the figurehead. Like, this was the guy in Swedish Counter-Strike. So yeah, I think it's a good pairing.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting, and I mean, you know that he's going to be well connected as well. So if you're making moves in Sweden in particular, he is going to be well connected on the marketing side and on the business side of things. And obviously, I mean, he's still buds with Potty and all those guys, and Potty's been still really well connected in the esports side of things in Scandinavia, Denmark, Sweden. He's been working on projects. Like Potty was working on a project that was actually
he still
really
does that like Silver Snipers thing, right? Doesn't he still do that like league or whatever with the old people?
I think what I'm thinking of is I had a couple
does
of
some sort of league as far as I know, right?
Where it was building up school programs and stuff like that.
Okay.
To get it's like Counter-Strike orientated, esports orientated school programs to get students access if they wanted, right? And to potentially like it's like an extracurricular program the same way sports would be, right? You could choose to play CS instead of soccer or whatever the fuck. But I always thought that was interesting. So there could be potentially quite a few connections to work with there in terms of like getting support for the team itself. So it's cool. It's cool to see. Happy to see some movement in the Swedish scene. It was looking a little bleak there.
I'll be very careful how I do it, but I'll insert a joke. Plus, the good thing about having Heaton as your ambassador / figurehead / CEO is you can guarantee that your fans will kick the shit out of the other team's fans.
There it is.
You have to know the deep flaw. Don't worry about it. You just have to know the deep flaw to know what I'm referencing there. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Okay, there's gonna be.
All I'm gonna say is Heaton's got a firm grasp on how fan culture works. There you go. That might be too obvious, actually. Delete that one. Go back. It's all right.
Definitely making it to the final cut.
Still a legend, though. Still a legend, Dory. Still a legend.
He is. That's the thing. He is. Fucking A, dude. I actually so I want to get your take in particular on this Cloud9 move. Because it's actually confirmed now that Inters is out and Buster is in, and it feels like this was a bit of a divisive move. Some people were saying good move, other people weren't. So I'm curious I'm sure you've probably talked about this on like Snake and Manta or something.
Only a little bit. Hasn't been super discussed as a move.
But I'd be curious on hearing your thoughts on this particular topic because it feels like I mean, at a glance, it seemed like Inters wasn't the problem. But do you have a different take on that?
No, basically, I think Inter's got scapegoated. Like, the one problem Inter's had, and this is justifiable, to be fair, his absolute worst tournaments in his career so far on LAN have basically been all the majors, unfortunately, right? That will hurt because people are going to, like, think about it. If you're a team like Cloud9 who still hasn't done anything at a major, the best they did was a top 8 once, you are still going to always think of that as the big moment. Like, that's what everything feels like it's building into. So even though, to me, like, they've had a lot of good LAN placings and made, like, playoffs, and they've won IEM Dallas and been in position in other tournaments to go semis. Even though to me they've done very well, they're obviously scrutinizing. Someone has to be blamed for how this year went because they didn't have the results. The problem, I think, is this. In my opinion, if anyone was going to get booted, it's either Hobbit because his form went down, or it's Nafani for not doing a very good job IGLing. Instead, somehow, because he's the guy who has the worst stats, Inters has to get booted as though it was fucking 2005 Semmler, and this was like HLTV forums going like, remove the low fragging guy and add the high fragging guy of our rival, like the most fucking noob level. But what's mad is they've done that in this team, because here's what I don't get. Do people forget? The rumors of the Buster move was like, maybe he joins Na'Vi or something. You remember that? That was last year, there was a rumor. The point is, he wouldn't be doing it to be like the fucking support or some shit role like Inter's played. So the reason I don't get this move is this. They've added a player who's better at fragging, but doesn't seem like he's going to do the same roles at all. So the reason I hate it is Inter's basically was like Perfecto. They put him as sort of like at times a hard support / anchor type guy who just stays alive in the site while the others rotate round and you delay the. He just did that stuff. So the only problem I have is I think not only have you scapegoated him, I don't really know that he like kicked himself out by playing super bad. He had a couple of bad tournaments. I think essentially you punished him for how other people played badly but had bigger names. And then the worst part for me is I just don't know if this is the right move to even make you better. Like, it might let you frag more, but I don't know what's going to do to the team structure. Because to me, one of the best things about Cloud9 was when they were on their game, they actually seemed to have good chemistry. Like they were quite a tight-knit group. As I always say, even though you might have 4 or 5 players, one player changing can completely change the chemistry of a team. You never know. Sometimes it just ruins the whole thing. So I'm kind of I'm like a little bit skeptical. I don't think it was a terrible move, but I'm a bit skeptical it's actually going to like do whatever they hope it will. Like, I don't think this takes them to the top of the scoreboard or whatever they hope, you know.
It's one of those things. I mean, the one of the questions is going to be whether or not Nafani has to then switch up his role and try to fill some of those gaps,
yeah.
and then you can see a dip in his performance further, because you know not only are you going to be calling, but if you have to play a different role, this is going to get real hectic real fast. But also you can have that kind of second guess snowball effect that just you start questioning, and instead of actually finding a solution quickly and moving on, or making very small changes that you can track whether they worked or not, you make a big change like a roster move. That's such a big change, and then you can't go back on that change. It's not like you can roll that back and start working your way back from there. It could very well accelerate into the whole team falling apart, especially given how long this team has been together. Could very well be the end. So it's clear that Cloud9 are trying to make moves. They really are a team that expect big results for considering the investment that they're probably making in CSGO.
I do think, though, by the way, as an aside, that Boster is a good player, though. Like, when they were way back in the day, long before they had Yakinda, when they were that Vanguard team that went to the major final, and it was like Kicker, fucking Adren, Jame, Boster, Sanji was the lineup, if you remember. I did think on that lineup, even though everyone used to praise the fuck out of Jame, I actually used to think on that lineup Boster was the best player. Like, he actually did have a pretty good rifle back then. And I will say, he is to this day 23 years old. So he's not that old. Like, big point to make. He's still got a bunch of years under it. Like, in theory, he shouldn't be burned out at all. So it could work out. We'll see. We'll see on that one. It's just, as I say, I feel like you're going to have to. Oh, he hasn't played in ages. They're going to have to completely reformulate the team, though.
He's still young. He'll have had a lot of time to get his head straight. Kazakhstani as well, so he doesn't necessarily come with all the geopolitical baggage that you had before as well with the Russian Ukrainian side of things. If you're trying to pick up one of those players, so it feels like there should be things that can work here. It's just a question of whether or not that's really what I wanted to get to the bottom of, is whether or not we feel like Inter's got scapegoated or not, because it did feel like he kind of got done dirty a little bit there. Well, I mean, obviously we're going to see how that pans out, because it's going to be a little bit, though. They're not playing at Blast, Blast Spring, so it's going to be a Katowice kind of move. So we'll see if it pans out for them there.
Here's what's brutal as well. This is where it also sucks if you're Inter's dude, because since he is Russian, he doesn't have a choice to go to Na'Vi or go to fucking some other team. I don't even know where he goes. Like, does he just disappear from the scene now and go to some nobody team? Or does he have to go and play for like FaZe or something? What the fuck's going to happen now? You know?
I mean, he's Nafani tweeted earlier that he's streaming, so he's probably just going to try and stream and make that kind of thing work. The funny thing is that
the only problem with that one is
like, let's just be player on a support player on a tier 1 team is still going to rock the shit out of most people. So he could still have an entertaining stream.
Yeah, you say that though, but who the fuck's going to watch?
You know exactly.
That would be like if like Smith's is streaming, it's like
learn the best flashes.
Listen, mate, unless everything else on Twitch goes down, I'm not going to be clicking. Sorry. You know? What do you want? You know?
Not even with him in his glorious return on the new Shoxy project. You're not going to get behind that. We need to talk about the French scene. There's been some movement there. I don't know if you've been keeping track of it, but Heat have lost 2 players. Body is now out of that roster, and Afro as well.
He's how you know, sadly, Semmler, that everyone in the modern day is too young. The Zoomers. Nobody even made the joke, dude. A guy called Body played for a team called Heat.
Yeah.
Is no one else aware of the movie from the 80s called Body Heat?
No, from the 80s.
It's like an erotic thriller. Go look it up now.
I'm not searching that.
It's a famous movie from Hollywood. It was from 1981. It starred William Hurt and Kathleen Turner. Here's the tagline. Are you ready? Here's the little blurb to get you interested. In the midst of a searing Florida heat wave, a woman persuades her lover, a small-town lawyer, to murder her rich husband, Nicola Nyholm. Now, I added in the Nicola Nyholm part, obviously.
Yeah, there you go.
How's he got body heat? That's ridiculous, mate. That's absolutely ridiculous.
Listen, dude, the thing is that the way that with the number of green rooms we've been in together, whenever I hear
By the
body,
way, am I the only one sat around going, guys, body just left heat? And everyone's like, what does that mean? The 1981 classic Body Heat starring William. I think I've just lost touch completely, haven't I? No, I should just read it back in. The references have gone out of touch now. I get it. Okay. I understand, Zoomers. That's not the reference you understand.
No,
I'm bringing it back.
All I'm thinking is whenever we say body, because that's all we used to sing back then. Body.
Oh, right.
Like that's whenever I hear
yeah,
body.
People
now,
don't know.
It's just Top Gun.
In the famous song "Playing with the Boys" by Kenny Loggins, which I haven't got time to go into why, but we used to play that in every green room while getting psyched up. In that, there is that line, and here's what's sad. I'm not joking. This is where people are sometimes a little bit, I would say, self-indulgent as talent, Semmler, because there's the classic line in that song, body's working overtime, the money don't stop. I could keep going, but I won't. You don't deserve that. That's like a Patreon perk. But anyway, because there's that line, body's working overtime. Dude, we were waiting so desperately in 2016 and 2017 for him to just once take over in overtime. And I'm not even joking. I swear it never happened, ever. Even if they went to overtime, this guy never had a good day. Because if it had, we were going to crowbar that into every segment. We could never do it. He never did it. Even though in the song, body was working, he never was working overtime. So sadly, actually, by the way, as an aside, for real analysis, he is an example, unfortunately, of someone who didn't really make it and live up to the potential. Because when he did first come into the scene in like 2016 or whatever, he did look like he had some potential. Like, yeah, maybe this could be a good player going forwards. All he did though is he just hung around on those G2 super teams. Eventually, they became just whack. Because remember, they did the lineup with the Existence, Shocks, Kenny S1, and then that was it. And they've just been in the bad teams now. Like, it's actually been kind of a bit of an underwhelming career, all in all. Hope for a little bit more from him.
This is where we're going to like get that next step in this storyline, right? So, right, so because the Heat was supposed to be like, oh, Heat, the second coming of French CS. Jax is joining. This is going to be it. They're going to really make some waves. They got some results. They didn't take over the world. What I'm curious about now, and I'm seeing this on 1pv.fr, French news website for Counter-Strike. Top story on their page is that apparently Body, he left Heat so that he can go sign with Falcons. And so that's going to be NBK, Kenny, Misuda, and
already a pretty nice lineup.
Joins.
Yeah.
And then who would be their fifth at that point? Haji at that point would be their fifth.
The old envious player, if people remember, yeah.
So I mean, like this actually could be interesting.
That's
it could actually be a team that could do some damage here. But again, the eternal question: Body's been in a position now where he's been calling. Is he going to, I don't see him joining this roster, which is NBK's roster, essentially. I don't see him joining this roster to be an IGL. So is he going to be able to find any kind of form where he can have an impact and he's not the IGL? Do you reckon that's possible? Because he's going to have to, if he wants to stay on this roster, he's going to have to be able to frag and follow whatever NBK is calling.
That is the problem. Obviously, the biggest question marks, there's two obvious question marks that make this team live or die. As you said, can NBK be an IGL and make it work? If he can, then it unlocks the second one, which is if Kenny S ever gets any form back, hey, suddenly we've got a half-decent team here. You know what? Like if this team with those two pieces worked, the rest of the team isn't bad. Like they would be like, let's be real. If you think about some of the teams that qualified to the major, Semmler, Sprout, Gamer Legion, wouldn't this team be right on the brink? Like they could go, and the joke is, even though people look, the Shocks and Smith, that is a pipe dream that they're qualified to the Paris major. This lineup looks like it's not impossible.
Little faith.
This one looks possible though, Semmler. Like this actually could maybe work.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for.
As an aside as well, if people don't know, they also, as their coach, have listed Oz Striker, who is actually like a 1.6 pro, used to at the end of 1.6 be like a good French in-game leader. So they've even got an experienced coach with them. Fair play.
They're actually playing right now. Literally as we're recording this, they're playing right now. So I thought there was supposed to be an up-and-coming match because they're going to be playing against the likes of Sprout, etc., pretty soon here.
Sure.
So, like that, at this point, with that kind of firepower, when you've got Kenny on your team and you actually have some experienced players, like MBK, obviously, and then Misuda, and now you're adding Body to the mix, I feel like that is a team that should be able to do some damage.
Let's be real.
That should be a solid top 30 team, right?
And also, some of these players, they've got some pretty land-tested players.
Yeah.
All of these players have played the circuit, yeah.
this should be a top 30 team
I
that
think
could
so.
even potentially be pushing top 20. I mean,
Yep.
hanging around there, being a threat, upset potential, 100%. If you're making those kinds of moves, it looks like Falcons are actually making some moves to make some waves here, which is really cool to see. Good on them. French scene needs it. It feels like the French scene has just been out in the desert, for so long now. The
Also, here's
Vitality
the
project
thing.
struggling.
Here's the key thing for me, Semmler, is, previously, like the best example, Shocks. When Shocks got kicked out of Vitality, some people wondered, would he go and join a team like Heat? But that's too big a drop down. Like, you're not going to do it because there's no money. There's no money in it, so you can't do it as a pro career. And you're never going to win with the team. So, of course, if you're Shocks, you do what you did instead. You try to go to Team Liquid, you go to international squads. Here's the difference. If they can actually get this Falcons team half decent, here's an obvious thought I'm having. Look, I think at this point in time, Apex's days are numbered on Vitality. Unless they win everything, they're just eventually going to kick him, aren't they? If they kick him, here's the difference. Normally, he'd be in the same boat, right? Who do I join? Can I join, I don't know, Ents? Can I be in Sprout? No. What if this team's that close and he can just join this team and it can be good? Imagine if he joins this team. Dude, now you're cooking with gas. You got some pieces then,
And I wonder, though, because then you've got 3 guys who would be calling or want to call.
No, he doesn't have to call, mate. Come on. The difference is with Apex is I think he just called because they needed someone to do it. I think he would give that up if he needed
Well, what
to.
about the curse? What about the going, when a rifler becomes an IGL, he never is able to get back to his former shape when he tries to go back to rifling. He is overthinking the game, I guess, especially with an entry frag kind of role where it's just don't think, just click heads. Now all of a sudden you're using up RAM trying to think if should I be going around that corner? No, don't think about it.
Look, I like Apex and consider him a friend. If you know me, you know why I said that. Apex is never going to have a problem overthinking. You've met him, Semmler. You've met him. If there's one thing Apex is never going to be plagued by, too many thoughts. And as I said, I like him. I like the guy.
He is what would we call him? The Mona Lisa of esports. He never gets a bad picture. Always every single event. He gets some new glorious picture.
As a joke is right. As a more serious piece of analysis, I actually do think, by the way, that's his problem in this team, in my opinion, Vitality. I actually think the problem is Apex's style. It's a very French style, by the way. It's just a bit one-dimensional. I think his style, if you asked him, is he likes to play like an entry fragger, up-tempo, fast Counter-Strike, reactive. You spot an opening and you go through it. The problem with that is that's almost the polar opposite to what the Astralis players are used to. They're used to that super boring, lurk the whole map. We've got 4 different moments before we need to make a choice which site to go to. Let us use the utility to that's the opposite style of Counter-Strike. So that's why, to me, I actually don't even blame Zonic. I think it's a very hard job to bring these two worlds together. It isn't as easy as just tell them just do this. The point is whatever's comfortable for one group might not be comfortable for the other. So yeah. But it is cool, by the way, because think about both these pieces of info, Semmler. These were the 2 scenes that were the original great scenes of CSGO was France and Sweden, but they'd both died out. And now we're actually seeing a slight, the beginnings. The French one's a little bit further wrong, but we're seeing the beginnings of sort of a return. It's quite cool. I think it's quite an
French
interesting
ones
angle.
are kind of doing what the French ones have done historically, which is get a few experienced players, try to bring up the next generation of French players and be like, oh, wait, hold on, this other experienced player is open. You come onto the team now. And then slowly but surely it just becomes yet another team of the same players. Dude, it's NBK, it's Kenny all over again. You know what I mean? Misuda's been around in the tier 1 now long enough where it's just he could probably be considered one of those. Body as well, So all of a sudden, instead of going the GODSENT route where you actually have a few Swedish players on there, who are on the up and coming, the French version of Falcons, the most promising team for the French scene right now is another rehash team of the experienced players. I don't know. It really is. It is a little bit comical for the French side of things. If this is the way that it's going to keep going, I mean, hopefully they're able to turn it around. And maybe they can get some wins. I mean, if they could actually qualify for the Paris Major, I mean, that is obviously going to be the big thing. And Apex in that interview, I mean, with the Zywoo interview, where they were talking about how they are obviously going to be extremely invested in this major, because who knows if France ever gets a major again. Look how long it's taken for France to even get a major. And they were at that press release, that presser with the Blast people at the Eiffel Tower as well, representing and talking in front of the French audience. So
You know why that's so mad? I've brought this up in the past, Semmler, but this is an example of where people, the real problem in the modern day is this, Semmler, people just no longer want to know the truth if it's uncomfortable, right? The reason that's mad to me, that of all the places to hold the presser, they chose the Eiffel Tower. I've told this story before, but I'll reiterate it. If you go to the Eiffel Tower in 2023 or in the modern day, I went 2 years ago, just before COVID, well, 3 years ago, then just before the COVID stuff happens, right? I did a trip to Paris. Literally, the Eiffel Tower area, Semmler, is where all those immigrant people who are like poor sit on the floor, like shanty style, selling like shitty models of like the Eiffel Tower or like some tacky like gauche fucking key ring or so. And they're all waiting for some like police guy to come, and they all do that thing where you take like the thing and make like a bindle out of the fucking gear and run with it over your shoulder. That's literally where they are. So the joke is, if you were trying to like flex how awesome Paris is, that's the last place you'd go. But the joke is, because it's esports, I bet they went out of their way not to ever get anything of those. It's shot in the camera angle, like, oh, can you just move over a bit? Like, yeah, like that's like, give me a break. Like it's a nightmare in that area. I'm telling you, mate, it's really bad now. It's got really out of control.
I mean, I hope that they didn't get discouraged and think that potentially it could be the same for the main event. I mean, one thing I did say is that at least they're not in Saint Denis, like for the Premier League. Was it Premier League finals? That football, the soccer
one
finals?
For the European Championship League, yeah, where they have the riot
European
or whatever.
Champions League, where
they just had those violent riots the other day, though, Semmler. Didn't you see that the other day? There was like a violent riot with all the cars on fire and shit.
Yeah. Or Tuesday.
That's why I did that tweet. If people don't
another
know,
day ending in Y in France.
That's why I did that tweet where I was like, remember the days when we used to hold majors in countries that don't have violent and dangerous riots? And people don't know, during the major in Brazil, all those fucking Bolsonaro supporters were going mental, tearing shit up. And then now we're having a major in France right after all this fucking rioting. Like, I hope nothing happens. I just fucking hope nothing happens,
Did I tell this story last week about just how many police officers they had to deploy on New Year's Eve?
Oh, what was it?
It's just a fucking nut story. So it's turned into a bit of a tradition for people to light cars on fire on New Year's Eve all across France and all the different cities in France. And they've started keeping a tally of it, and different cities now compete against one another to see who can burn the most cars. And so they got
what a boomer I am, guys. When I was a kid, we used to just light a Roman candle. Now you light a car.
A firework.
Man, I know, what a boomer I am.
Now you're launching fireworks at cops. So, okay, fine, fair enough. We can't even play with fireworks anymore. But no, that was the thing. This is how bad the situation is. I think last year it got up to like 1,400 or something cars burned on New Year's Eve. So out hunting for it. And so this year they deployed 130,000 police officers across France to try and stop people from burning cars to slow them down. And they said, guys, huge success. Only 840 something cars burned this year.
Dude, they actually unironically attempted, like, look, aside from the 800 cars, it was mostly peaceful. It's like, yeah, no shit. Like,
130,000 police officers out, and they still managed to burn 800 something cars. It's a fucking disaster.
What a world.
Utter disaster.
Basically, here's the thing.
Major's going to be happening there.
Are you ready, Semmler? Here's the joke that's going to make it all better. So just lie back, my children, and daddy's going to apply the balm that'll soothe everything that ails you. Here's the joke. That's why they had to remove DOS 2, Semmler, because it has that burning car on it.
I got ideas.
So they knew with the Paris major coming up, better not give them any ideas. Exactly. The one that everyone remembers, Carrigan in TSM used to hide behind it so you couldn't see his head on the fucking back end. Yeah, you know the one I'm on about.
There you go. And what do you do? What do you do on Long Dust 2? You throw mollies at that car all day. Again, yeah, of course. That's the point. Yeah, fair enough.
Exactly.
Bloody hell. Aye.
Right. Any more real news?
That we have really going on. So apart from the movement in the French scene and Blast really coming up, I mean, we could do predictions for the Blast groups because obviously those are going to kick off tomorrow.
Yeah,
and so we can come back next week and kind of visit those. I was looking at our lovely sponsors website, esports bets.io. And dude, some of the odds they were offering from these initial matchups were tantalizing. Evil Geniuses, I'm looking at it right now at the time of recording, maybe changing whatever, but like at the time of recording, 6.5 for Evil Geniuses to 1.1 for an Evil Geniuses upset. I'm just like, holy smokes, for the first match of the year where nobody's really going to know what kind of power level EG you're coming up with. I don't know, man. There's some spicy upset potential here going on in this first one. Complexity Gaming also going up against FaZe first round. That can be spicy upset potential, especially if FaZe have got a stand in. complexity. They could punch above their weight for a series, right? It could be like there could be some upsets to kick things off here. So I was wondering
I'll tell
if there
you
was
the
any
interesting
particular
one
match
for
that you
me.
were interested in.
Yeah, here's the one I'm interested in. Liquid OG.
Yeah, there you go.
There's upset potential there for OG.
OG could fuck them up.
Remember, they're going to have advantage at the AWP position. Dexter's better than OC. So, that'll be an interesting match, too, because both teams are actually pretty solid. OG, I mean, everyone just saw the World Finals. They have firepower. You can't take that away from them. They definitely have firepower. And then the Liquid team is just a very up and down team. So, I think there's a little bit, put it this way, I would take Liquid to win, but I think there's a little bit of sweat on that one, mate. I'd be a little bit worried if I'm them. There's some firepower on that side.
It's less of the risky, less of the risky bet. But then again, obviously the odds show that, right?
It's OG favorite.
I'm over here still thinking
you're trying to get crazy odds, I see, right? Okay.
Complexity. I don't know.
Here's the other obvious one to me that I think spicy as fuck. Na'Vi against Nip, but Na'Vi, remember, Na'Vi's got their own situation changing out SDY, whereas Nip's got that fucking guy from Na'Vi Academy, Headtrick. Because here's the thing, I can't know yet how Headtrick himself will work out, but I think if he actually turns out to be a really good, competent AWPer, I think Nip's the sleeper team of the year, mate. I think that's the team that could be top 5 or something if everything goes right. Because look at the fucking, it's all about if Headtrick's good, obviously. But if they do, they'll have Alexi B, Pro, mate, that lineup's getting pretty good.
Of course,
it's starting to get
the
better.
Obvious one. But that's another team with a question mark, right?
Sure.
Where we're gonna have a player we're not sure what he's gonna be capable of. He's been in that studio before. I'm pretty sure he played for Na'Vi.
He was the one playing in the one. He played in the one last year after. Exactly. It was the middle of the fall.
He'll be aware of the playing environment. He'll be aware of what to be expected. So at least there's no shock there this time for him.
Yeah.
I suppose now, I mean, it really is for real though, because now you're on the team, and so they're going to be expecting something out of you. But it's the golden opportunity for him. But again, it's one of those players where it's just there's no real information on him going into this environment apart from that one time he stood in for Na'Vi in a studio environment. So at least it's a studio environment. But past that, he could be a Monacy, or he could he could fall completely flat. Who knows what to expect? Super stressful situation for NIP, but. Again, you got to take risks if you're NIP, and it seems like they're in a position right now. They've got a lot of movement going on their organization. It feels like they've unlocked some money somewhere or whatever, because they're making moves all sorts of. They've got an LPL team now, I think, as well. Or
from a year or two ago, they did a partnership with V5 or whatever. Yeah,
right. Was that a year or two ago?
It was, yeah.
Why did that pop up in my feed as if that was yesterday?
Oh, I don't know, but I do remember. If you remember, they did that at the same time that they didn't they float on the Chinese stock market or something weird? Do you know what I mean? When they went public,
they do have some. They did get some money.
That was the same time that they partnered with the Chinese people, I think.
Got it. Why the hell did that pop up on my feed then? There was something. Maybe it was some other kind of news that was going on. Yeah, I mean, it seems like things are moving and shaking over.
Yeah, according to this, that happened in August of 2021, so it was 2 years ago now.
What the fuck? Okay, then. Fair enough.
Maybe it was some updated info.
Maybe it was some kind of updated thing. I could have swore.
I did see. If I search it, it says I think it's that they're changing the name to NIP is the reason why now. I think that's the difference. They stayed as Victory 5 before, but this year, because this news from 6 days ago, they're going to be in the LPL as NIP, as far as I know. That's the difference. Maybe that was the news you saw.
Well, that was. I mean, that's.
It's not a very good team though. By the way, they don't have a top LPL team or whatever. It's just a whatever team.
It's just so. I mean, it's still just NIP kind of diversifying, I guess, and getting out there. And especially if they don't need to worry about management or any of that sort of thing, all the costs that come in with it, they can just kind of count on somebody else to run that sort of thing. If it's an established organization already, it makes sense for NIP to be making that kind of move. I'm taking a quick gander here again. Astralis Vitality Group A. That could also be a good one. I mean,
what makes that match really interesting is this: everyone else is going to go. It's all the Astralis players playing each other. Do you not watch Counter-Strike? That happened to PGL Stockholm, you morons. When Nip with Device played against the other 4 players, including Exotic Coach. That's not even a story.
Picture was taken.
Yeah, y'all exactly. That's what that picture was after. Y'all are so far behind on the fucking stories. You're actually 2 years late to your own fucking narrative. So that's not the story. The reason this one's interesting is this, Semmler, because man, Vitality is underwhelmed for the last 3 or 4 months. So if you're Astralis, because of the whole Boz factor, you actually have no pressure. It's the first tournament for Device. No one really is going to put pressure on Astralis. If they lose, no one's going to mock them. But if they can win against the Vitality that she's looking a little bit fucking wounded, what a fucking crazy upset to start things off with. Because remember, this format is also the mad forgiving one where you play those planes. So I think there's a world where they could pull out a crazy upset. I mean, by the way, just the Device angle alone, spicy, right? What if he has a good game? It's possible.
It would be terrific. It would be terrific, specifically because there's that whole the most successful core thread going on the front page of Reddit right now. Astralis with Zipnix and Dupree and Device on there. I mean, it's always going to be entertaining to watch those guys play against one another. But I think you're bang on the money with Astralis not having any pressure coming out here. It's less. It's more. I know that a lot of these teams are going to be saying that they have less pressure, but I do feel like Na'Vi need to come up with something good here, because if they continue to kind of flip flop around and not look completely dominant with the best player in the world on the roster, if Electronic continues to dip in terms of performance, if Bit also continues to dip and doesn't really come up with those monster numbers, if Na'Vi are kind of back to square one trying to figure out how to get Simple to stop raging at teammates, we could see a big drop off in Na'Vi's performance, and that would just be devastating. So especially devastating for viewership as well. That was another point that I wanted to bring up in regards to Blast. It really, they just get shafted left, right, and center, but they I think it was perhaps viewer fatigue after the major, but and they really dropped off in terms of viewership. That we covered that at the end of last year, where they really weren't putting up big viewership numbers for the fall finals or for the world finals. So you got to hope that after this nice long break, the hunger will be there to watch some good CS, and that Blast will be able to get some good matches out there and get some good viewership stats for the sake of the company. I feel like they need it, because I mean, as far as the player base in Counter-Strike is going, it's better than ever. But as far as the viewership is concerned, it was definitely a little bit of a dip in the second half of the year. So I'm very curious to see what the viewership looks like for this event, and I'm going to be keeping an eye on that for sure. But as far as that's concerned, I mean, that could be a show, if you want to call it there. I mean, I think.
Do we have any questions, by the way?
Yeah, that's the thing. Questions? I did open it up for questions.
By the way, that will get figured out very soon. Like Monty said to me, something like it's going to get resolved within, I think, like next week or something. They're going to have news soon on what they're doing with the whole God coin shit. Don't worry about that. It's coming out soon.
Yeah, there was a discussion, and that's why I was curious if we got questions or not, because there was a discussion about the question about the coins. But for the people who still are holding coins or are going to be transitioning over, whatever the next solution is, I mean, there's still a channel to ask questions. So if you haven't asked questions, now's the time. There's actually quite a few of them, so this is cool. Let's hop into it then. So thank you again for all the support, guys. Even if you're just tuning in, be sure to like and subscribe, leave a comment, and obviously leave a rating or a review wherever, if you're listening on one of the audio platforms. But big thanks to the support, and thanks to the guys who are holding Grogcoin right now that still supports the show, but obviously we're coming up with something different. Okay. Well, first question, Blaz. Where would you rank your video games compared to other art forms? Where would you rank video games in general compared to other art forms?
Here's the problem, Semmler. If this was I don't even know if 10 years would be enough. It maybe have to be 15 or 20 years ago. If I was a lot younger in my esports career, I would have done the same thing everyone does for corp reasons and been like, video games are art, games like Metal Gear Solid and Final Fantasy VII were as immersive an experience as a great movie like The Godfather. I think actually the problem is this: as I've matured, I don't have to corp anymore, guys. I don't need video games to be amazing. That's not a core part of my identity. I'm amazing whether video games are art or not. So the problem I have to say is this, Sam: as my life goes on and I get older, the video game angle becomes less and less and less important and relevant and more frivolous and just some silly pastime, which is fine. You can have a silly pastime, but to me, it's not something super incredible. So I have to say, I probably would put it quite low on this list now, even though once upon a time it would have been number one. I think number one for me, if we're talking about art, that was the premise, right? Of whether it's art, right? If we're talking about art, to me, number one has to be, I actually think it's easy. It's either aesthetic architecture, so things like a cathedral, just image. As soon as I see that, I feel something before I even think anything. Or the other one is music, but I have to put a very careful caveat, not modern day music, which is about lyrics and fucking, I'm talking about classical music, orchestral music. Again, same thing. I get that feeling of awe the second I hear that music, mate. The second it kicks in, I get a feeling like that's just something special.
Yes. Well,
And then books are obviously right up there
100%
too.
agree on that point. I've actually really narrowed down what kind of music I listen to now. I'm pretty much only listening to classical music, and then I'll have like a couple of things, some metal, some stuff like that I'll listen to when I'm in the gym or when I feel like it. But man, classical music, there's just so much of it. It's so good. All right. That aside, though, where would you rank video games compared to other art forms? The problem is now, well, pretty much. Aesthetically, personally, for me, video games have never been about like the story or any of it or the graphics. Like for me, it's always always just been an outlet for competition. So it was always about esports or rating, or it was always about arena, or Bloodline Champions, or then StarCraft 2. It was always just about competition. I've never finished any of the stories in any of the games.
Right.
It's just an outlet for competition. And so like, a game doesn't need to be pretty. I would intentionally turn all the graphics down just to be able to get that extra few FPS, right? So in terms of art, not so much. I mean, I understand that there are games out there where they really do try to push on that front. And as I understand it, like the God of War Ragnarok or something like that actually surprised a lot of people, and they did a good job. They did a good job there with the art and the story and all of that. So, apparently it's still possible to tell a story. But I think now games have just been reduced to money pumping machines. That's all it is. They've fine-tuned every aspect of a game now to just try and extract the maximal amount of money out of you. And so that whole aspect to the game industry has turned me off completely, almost completely, to the game industry, with just how rampant it is now, and how it's all just about, you don't own the games anymore. You don't get a physical copy of a game anymore. You get an account, and then you rent the game, essentially. So if you ever lose access to that account, well, fuck you. You don't get your game. It's not your game. So you don't own the game. And then the whole game is just about microtransactions and pumping you for money every chance they get. So it's a very unhealthy sort of situation, and I don't like it at all. So that's kind of where I land now on video games compared to other forms of art. I mean, dude, I'm looking at these just these fucking marble statues, and the level of detail that these classic artists are
They
able
look
to
impossible,
achieve.
don't they? Some of the ones of like the wrinkles on the
It's the
clothing
cloth,
smelling it,
where
yeah.
the cloth overlay, and you're just like, how did somebody do that? How is it even possible, physically possible, to do that with stone? So yeah, no, video games don't come close, unfortunately. Unfortunately, it's just the way it is.
The real problem is this. I sort of implied this, but I'll make it explicit. The problem is, the less you know about art, if you play video games, the more they'll seem like the best shit ever.
Fair, yeah, there you
Essentially,
go.
my
That's
point
right.
is, as you get to know other things, they'll just be, it's not that they're whack, they'll just become less and less important and impressive, basically. It's also part of growing up in it,
Yeah. All right, BZ. There was once the Clash for Cash event hosted by E-League. That was great. What historical Clash for Cash would generate the most buzz?
That's the sad thing. If people don't remember, the real problem with that approach was that was actually a classic sign that they didn't understand esports. Because the reason they picked Virtus Pro Astralis is because that had been the final of the previous major, remember? But what they didn't know was, since we're talking, it was like 5 or 6 months later. 5 or 6 months is like, Virtus Pro was dead by then. Like, they weren't a top team anymore. To them, it was like, because it was like, think they're coming from sports. Like, in the NBA, if I get the reigning NBA champ, they're probably still pretty good. Like, they didn't get their esports was different. So basically, he's right. I always thought the premise was great. It's just they didn't actually put the right teams together. So if you had to go in all of history, like the obvious example to me would be something like, I would probably say, because we're trying to get the most hype ever here, right? I think it would be something like, like classic Fnatic versus Envious or something. One of the old, like, truly great matchups, or the Astralis guys against the Virtus Pro, but like in the proper era when they were the best, go back to like 2015 or 16. So those were the matchups that always sold and always delivered. It has to be a huge marquee matchup if we're going to do this.
It does. And we started off with nostalgia going back to 2014, etc. But like, I'm still sitting here. Just give me a replay of peak Very Games versus NIP semifinal DreamHack winner 2013, 3-mapper going, just like everybody in shape, everybody on form. That would be such a fucking good game. Get Right just materializing behind everybody's backs every fucking time, somehow finding a way to thread his way through the defense. Just freak. So good. Yes, give me that. That would be so sick. But again, that is the stroll down memory lane, if we were to get it. All right, Santiago La Farga. What is one piece of music, book, movie, etc. you didn't think much of initially, but then became one of your favorites? Why was this the case? Starship Troopers, the movie. I wrote it off like when I first saw it. It was really the NPC take of, oh, this is just propaganda, blah blah blah. You know, it was just a complete surface level. Everything of depth in that movie missed me by a country mile. And I was like the director. I just took it at face value and didn't look any deeper into any of the topics. Even he didn't even know he was discussing when he made that movie. And then over the years, I've read the book several times. It's one of my favorite books now, and the movie is certainly. I mean, over the years, you come back, you've learned some stuff, you watch the movie again, and you get your mind blown because of everything that is actually going on in that movie. It's a masterpiece. Like the book and the movie are both masterpieces in their own right, and I love them both, and I'd recommend them both.
Problem with that is when he says it has to be my favorite. Like, I don't know if I've got one that's like my favorite. There's definitely ones that like I didn't think were that good, but like over time, again, because that's the key principle here actually ties into what I was saying before, which is what changes over time is you, not the work of art. The work of art's just there. But the premise is you being a different person or a changed person or a person with more experiences can alter your experience of interfacing with the art. So what I would say is, I wouldn't say it's one of my favorites, but a classic example to me would be when I was young in esports, like when I was in my early 20s, I watched loads of movies because this was the era when you could most easily just download movies off the internet, basically, and get them anywhere. And at the time, there was way less controls. You could get almost any movie you wanted ever in history. So I used to just go on IMDb and just go through that top 250, you know, all classic directors. And so I've seen loads. So an example of one, which when I was a young man, I couldn't get into at all, is, do you know the Stanley Kubrick movie called Barry Lyndon? It's the one where it's like he's in like France in like, yes, I'm going to guess like what, the 18th century
that when
or
I
something.
was like 15. I can't remember.
That's the problem. Details. The problem with this movie is this, Semmler. If you watch it like a young guy watching a movie, so you want action and cool, it's got none of that.
It's got none of that, no.
What makes the movie good is it's a very slow burner, but essentially if you know about Kubrick's process, that's when it starts to become interesting. Because what makes this movie interesting is two things. One, he was someone who wanted each of the shots in the movie to be like one of those amazing portrait, like landscape, like pictures of the countryside, of like the French countryside and England, which if you've ever seen, those are probably the most popular like landscape and like nature pictures in the world. Like that's that. So he wanted the artistic element. And then the other angle was he actually had to invent a bunch of like technical stuff to film like dark scenes lit by candlelight naturally without artificial light. And he was able to do this. So if you know these things and you're an older person who can enjoy like a slow fit burn, the aesthetics of the art, it's actually a mega movie. Like it has a lot of components about it at a really high level. It's just that if you're just only watching it like Hollywood style for like cool acting or like a fun story, there's none of that. You're not going to get any of that. It's going to be way too slow for you. So if you're watching for the Hollywood angle, if you want the story to make sense, and at the end to be like, but why did he do that? You're not going to enjoy it at all. Like you're going to be me when I was 21 or whatever. But if you watch it as an adult and you know what I'm talking about, it actually is a piece of art. It's quite a beautiful piece of art. It's got a lot of depth to it.
Now that you mention it, I need to make note of this.
To rewatch.
100%.
You'll like it, man. You'll like it for sure.
Especially when you learn a bit about more about Kubrick's directing style and how he was a nightmare to work with because everything had to be flawless, perfect in each shot. And if it wasn't, it's like you're redoing that 30 times until you get it right. So everything is perfect in his movies for that reason. Okay. Thank you for reminding me. I'm going to actually have to go back and watch that again. I'm sure it's going to be completely different now. All right. Architect of Korean esports based Joe, every time. You are in a severe need for a capital injection. Which of the following financing options would you choose? Become an ambassador for NEOM and the Saudi 2030 vision, host an LPL event in Chinese Taipei, become business partners with Slasher and Destiny, where you guys review AI art and cook Wagyu steak well done with steak sauce while doing a 5-hour podcast daily.
Well, obviously, we're not picking the last one, are we? That one, he's sort of loaded this question a little bit, so believe it or not. I feel like we're not going to pick the third. Is there more options? Is there more than 3?
That's it.
This is one of those 3. So which of the 3 we pick? What was the first one?
Become an ambassador for NEOM and the Saudi 2030 vision.
Here's the joke. Out of the 3, technically, isn't the Chinese one the least distasteful? Because the problem with the NEOM one, if people don't remember, is NEOM project itself did imply there was an element of like potential sort of genocide, if you know what I mean. Like you were sort of killing a bunch of people to move them off this land. So the problem with that one is that's way too on the nose. Like you just it's why the Frank angle is outrageous. It's like you're just directly working with people who are evil, like who you think are evil. The Chinese one's more like, look, the entire state does sort of things over here out of your sight that are a bit dodgy, and that one's less. Obviously, the third one in theory is not wrong, but you have to spend your time with Slasher and Destiny, and you have to review AI art. So, like, of the three, actually, the latter one's the most distasteful in a fucked up way. But I guess I have to choose the Chinese one, even though I'd obviously choose none. I'd choose none of those three.
You choose none of these three. Like, the capital isn't worth it. Because,
I've
again,
at
it's
least
like
been to China,
your need for a capital injection. But you can't always declare bankruptcy, right? So it's like, oh, well, you need or you choose death, or you choose bankruptcy.
The joke is, at that point in time, if those are my three options, I actually surely have a fourth option of a lead injection to the fucking dome.
There you go.
There's always an option. There's always a choice.
There it is. All right, Jerk. What are the biggest challenges facing our industry for 2023?
Here's the problem. I think on this one we should try and pick something like not obvious, because it can't just be stuff like we're partnered with all evil. Like everyone knows that we're just going down that road. It has to be something real.
That's not a big challenge because
no, exactly. You have to pick something that's like a real thing people might be mulling over. So what do you think at the moment is like? What are the big topics?
I think your Four Horsemen podcast with Tommy is perfectly timed, because it's something that we've been talking about for a long time, and it does feel like the chickens are going to come home to roost given the economic situation that we're going to be facing this year and in the next year. I mean, I don't even think it's done in one. This is going to be an ongoing issue. And esports is a luxury. It's not like it's food or something that somebody absolutely needs and is going to go out of their way completely in every single way to get their hands on. I mean, esports is a luxury in and of itself. So when things get tight, it's going to the advertising dollars that pay and fund for a lot of esports are going to start drying up, because companies are going to start tightening their belts. And when that happens, you're going to see a lot of shrinking going on throughout the space, and CSGO is going to experience that as well. You may see tier 1 talent either have to reconsider their day rates or severely lower their day rates, or they're going to get phased out in favor of cheaper up and coming talent. Teams are probably going to experience the same kind of problem, where tier 1 players who expect to get paid a certain amount probably going to get have to take a step back there. I mean, you may see quite a few changes, because I think that the money is going to dry up. Especially one good point that was made is especially the teams that were reliant on crypto, on these crypto deals, that it was a major advantage if you were in Counter-Strike or Dota, because Valve allowed you to have pretty much whatever sponsor you want, so you could get crypto deals going. Now, if the crypto companies are going under like FTX, then you're going to have fucking problems there, because if you were, trying to structure up your 2023, 2024 plans, if you were trying to set up multi-year long deals with these crypto companies, and all of a sudden the crypto companies are going bust, that's going to yank the rug out. So I feel like it's mainly financial issues. The biggest challenges that we're going to face this year, it's going to be financial issues for the industry as a whole. May fuck everything up. I don't know. Or it's going to be, it's going to be good, right? Because the clever people are going to find a way to make it through. Prices may actually come back down to like reasonable levels, sustainable levels, where you can start building them up again as the industry, rebuilds. And it could very well be a natural reset that the industry needs, because everything in CSGO is so overinflated in terms of cost.
Me and Richard always say this, because we've been through a bunch of these like resets of the industry. So if people don't know, I joined the esports industry right after the .com bubble had burst. And then in like 2008, 2009 was when the whole housing crisis that triggered the global recession, right? Mm-hmm. So we've been through them a bunch of times. Here's the good news, guys. The bad news is, yes, things downscale, budgets go down, tournaments disappear, teams have to go away, some players retire. But here's the good news. Nearly all the people who leave are all the people you wanted out of the scene. They're all the people who were only here when it was easy, when the money was flowing fast, and you didn't have to be good, and you didn't have to be competent, and you could be shady, and they're the people who get washed out. It's the best thing about the scene, because think about it. When it gets to a point where now you have to ask yourself, I don't really make as much money anymore. Now you have to ask yourself things like, do I actually care about what I'm doing? Am I doing it because I want to do it? Do I get a satisfaction just out of doing the thing? Spoiler, there will always be pro players who are like the get-rights of the world, who will practice the maximum amount for €1,000 a month. They don't. Meanwhile, there will always be be an American 17-year-old kid who thinks 20,000 a month doesn't mean he has to practice as much. Like, there will always be those two sets of people. The good news is the get right guy will stay. The stupid kid will go to a Valorant or leave the scene and go elsewhere. So even though in the short term it will sting, it's like pulling a fucking plaster off. Like, it's better to just get it off now and get reset. And then, as you say, the hope is this. You hope when you burn out the brush, the deadwood, as it were, that you can actually like make it better when we go next time. When we then retake that space the next time, you hope it's more legit people who do it. Sadly, that part's probably naive, but you hope it means when you clear out the shit, the more legit people come through, you know. So I would say a similar thing.
Could very well be that sort of scenario
for the whole year,
like, Thorin,
economic trends are going to be the entire year, basically, because it's just going to be what's going to happen the whole year. Like, spoiler, it'll be happening in your personal life as well, so don't worry about that. It won't just be esports. We're all going to be figuring shit out for this year, I think.
All right, Dunks. Not sure if Semmler follows tennis. I don't. But do either of you believe the argument Kyrgios could be one of the greats if he actually applied himself, work ethic wise, like the rest of the pros, or is it a coping mechanism like something a kindergartner would say? And do you find his behavior, antics pathetic or needed entertainment for the sport?
Like, the sad thing is, I don't remember which one it is. So some fan of mine would have to tell you. But I did have a question very much like this in one of my like Patreon AMAs that I do the video versions of. So it'll be on my channel somewhere. Basically, someone asked me a similar thing, like, don't you think Nick Kyrgios is actually like underrated? And I had a whole rant. So I won't do the whole thing again now because it was like a 20-minute rant. Essentially, no. You've sort of nailed it on the end there. I think when people say that thing of like, it's like config, like the logic would be this, right? It would be like if I said config could be the GOAT of Counter-Strike. I think that's possible, except it isn't really. It's only possible if Config's skill set remains identical, but I change every facet of who Config the human being is. Therefore, he never could be the GOAT because it's essential that he is him. So the problem is he can't be someone else. So essentially the problem is this. The Kyrgios guy has skills, but I actually do think it's just corp that people do that line of like, but if he just like changed his mentality and cared more, then he'd be there. Yeah, but here's the problem. His peers don't have to do that. No one has to go to Djokovic and go, Djokovic, get your career together, mate. You need to be he's already himself internally driven to be the best to ever play tennis. You cannot fuck with that mentality because the problem I think is this, right? They're making out when they say a line like that, like everyone else is less talented, but they just did the work. No. Like Djokovic is probably more talented and works harder. So yeah, at that point in time, I'm not Australian and I don't just need people to trash talk. Tennis is actually a gentleman's sport. So this isn't UFC, guys. I don't need Nick Kyrgios to be rude to people and to fucking get kicked out of matches and to have fun. Like, it's a gentleman's sport. So no, I get, if you're Australian or you're just drawn to those people, let's be real, in esports, I've often been drawn to that archetype, like the skilled guy who just has some sort of behavioral problems, but there is a bit of cope in it. Like, I do think people sort of justify it like, oh, but it's so unfair. Like, if he just could get his head down, like, no one's making this cocksucker fucking mess his career. It's just like Config. They're ruining their own lives out of being egotistical and entitled guys. Like, I wouldn't worry about it too much. I think he's slightly overrated. He is a skilled player, but he's overrated.
I watched, somehow it popped up on my feed this morning. I watched a clip of a tennis arena. Somebody was recording from inside a tennis arena. Okay. A big match, packed stadium. And like a point gets made, the whole place blows up. Everybody's cheering, going nuts. And then within the span of 2 seconds, silence again for the next
It's why
serve.
tennis is the one to me, Semmler. That shows that it's not about the tech. It's the culture of our audience.
Yes, the culture.
The culture we have in CSGO is that, I've always said this, it is a bunch of 16-year-old kids acting like they are away from mum and dad and they can be naughty now. Except that's our fucking audience. Whereas, as you say, the audience at an Australian Open or something like that will instantly shut up so the serve can take place. And they know, by the way, if you shout, you get thrown out on your ass, like Jazzy Jeff style. Like, so it's just known. So, like, if you can control a whole crowd, remember, let's be real as well. Let's not act like, I purposely picked Australian Open there, Semmler. You think there isn't some, like, fucking Aussie who's had 4 beers at that event? Of course there is. But even he knows from social pressure, like, better not be an arsehole. The joke in esports is they aren't even drunk and they're all being dickheads. Like, that's why I think it's a cultural shift, but, like, it could be fixed, or in theory, it's possible to have that problem go away, you know, because tennis proves it.
It is. It just, you would have to be willing to take the flack. Yes. You could be a TO and actually, I mean, there's a bunch of things that you could still do as a TO, even to address the cheating issue, is you could just stop piping the commentary into the arena and let the fans enjoy it the way that you would a normal sporting event. There's all sorts of stuff like that we could talk about, and somebody could try to do if they actually wanted to experiment with these sorts of things, and if they actually wanted to have some kind of impact on the culture. But I guess so long as you can put out a nice PR statement saying, hey, at least we tried, and still have the same results. But hey, at least you have that PR statement that says that you tried to make a difference. Oh, we announced before the match, try to behave in this fashion. It's like, okay, fine, fair enough. Now enforce it during the match. Like now we need to get constant enforcement if we want to see that kind of change. But yeah, you're right about that though. I don't think you need that sort of thing from you've already had a McEnroe in tennis, right? Like you've already had, it's like he's going to be that guy pretty much forevermore. You don't really need another one. Don't try to do this. Don't try to run the same act. All right, Mosu Kiton. Why do you think esports, more than other sides of the gaming space, has been able to resist extreme politics?
Sorry, did he just come out of a coma in Czech State? It was October 2016. All right, cool. Well, welcome back. Like, are you out of your mind? The joke is, you're literally asking that question of two people who, if it was possible, would have been cancelled out of our entire dream job. What are you talking about? Like, you're aware this is Last Free Nation. We're not on like ESPN esports right now. Like, I don't work with ESL. What are you talking about? Like, what a mad question. Look, what I wish, Semmler? I just wish for even a day I could live in the naivety that guy lives in. Like, you know what? I'm glad politics hasn't like ruined esports or anything. Did you hear that whole segment about Frankie in the beginning? Like,
go back, like, can we just go back to sleep again? Let me take that blue pill.
Remember, Guy, think about what I said at the beginning of the episode. People like Frankie, top professionals who've worked with the BBC and all the big events, are using the lives of real humans who are going to be killed to get free internet likes on an app owned by Saudis. Like, it's a pretty rough state of affairs, Guy, that is very much being impacted by politics. So I just want less politics if it was up to me. Or none. How about none? That would be cool.
None. Yes, how about none?
Here's what's fucked up. For real, this is what I wish we could do for real, Semmler. For real, have none. Like, I wish we could all collectively make an agreement. None of us will bring politics up when we're only talking about esports. I would do that deal tomorrow. Who the fuck wouldn't?
It's true, except that now I think we've crossed the Rubicon on certain topics that are verboten.
You can't go back, of course. Yeah, that's true.
Where we can't go back now because now it really is something where you need to actually have a discussion, and the discussion is so highly politicized you can't have the discussion, as we found out recently. That is a Rubicon has been crossed now, unfortunately, where there's no going back on that front. Or if you were to go back on that front, it would inherently be a political choice, and then that opens you up once again, which is by design, of course. It is supposed to be a minefield. It's by design a minefield where wherever you step, you risk blowing up, and that's the whole point of the exercise. So the state of things, yeah, the state of things is that slowly but surely it's permeating even this industry, most of it. And maybe this is just like some fucking next level troll, and I love you for it because it was a great question and that was a good laugh. But even if it isn't, I'm willing to cut you some slack, in the sense that it is slowly but surely permeating even this space, and that's really unfortunate because esports at the core, one of the things that was most attractive about it and what got me involved with it was that it is at the core, it is a competitive environment and it's a meritocracy. And so fuck your politics, right? It's like, are you good? That was one of the whole things about getting on LAN and competing was, are you good or not? Everything else is bullshit. None of the rest of it matters. It's just, are you good enough to click some heads and get and compete? And that has a nice way of cutting away all the bullshit, right? And unfortunately, that's the reason why there are some politics that are starting to make their way through, because the grifters know that they can get away with it. If they can politicize the topic, then they can get away with something that they otherwise wouldn't be able to. And unfortunately, that's the reality we live in now. And it's going to be something that we're going to have to deal with going forward, it looks like. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, it's all good.
All right, Snake Gold. What's one current flaw that you would like to disappear immediately with no effort? Now,
does he mean like in us?
Exactly.
The game,
like,
or what?
Is it a personal flaw or is it a flaw?
I assume he means like
society,
our character by the way he says flaw, right?
I'm assuming that.
I'll tell you what mine would be. I can tell you mine easily.
Okay, go.
It would easily be I have very poor impulse control. So
okay.
Just be that. Like if I get essentially
candy's on the table.
No, I don't mean like that. I mean to things like topics. Like, if I put it this way, if I approached everything like a chess master and used the full clock and thought as long as I could before I ever responded, I would destroy everyone. I'd technically. But the problem is, if people emotionally inflame me, it's very easy for me to just go. I get caught up in the sort of like the whatever's being discussed.
Okay. And does that also include? Because that was what a little bit of a. Does that include? How to put this? That was one of those frustrating moments over the holidays where, in the moment you want to make a joke, and maybe jokes can be a bit spicy sometimes, and now it's just like you need to curb that. It feels like once again we constantly need to watch what we're saying at all times and really have that impulse control, because maybe you want to make that funny joke, but maybe that funny joke turns out it's not so funny, or it ends up costing you, and you may regret it. It's along those lines that you're pushing?
There's some of that as well, sure.
Yeah, I could see.
I would just say, here's the thing. It's not specifically like, I think I've said the wrong jokes. Man's more like, it's just, I know basically it's why they can't get me now, Semmler. That's used to be how all my enemies made me look foolish. Like, the best example is that women in esports stuff. If people don't know, here's what for real was happening. Thousands of women were taking tweets of mine like, why are we saying it's toxic that men are doing this? And the reply would be like, you are a fragile incel who will never be loved, and I wish I could have sex with your father so you could actually have a child who meant something in this world. I had thousands of women send me that. Well, the problem I didn't realize was this. When you then, like a feedback loop, respond to that, everyone who only follows you doesn't see any of the stuff. So to them, it looks like you're just sat crazy, just saying out of nowhere all crazy stuff like, oh, so now everyone thinks I'm like that, and you just look like the crazy one. Whereas the sad thing is, in that scenario, you're responding in a totally reasonable manner, appropriate, proportional to what they're doing to you, and it's just a feedback loop. So what I realized was it was just a really annoying way where my enemies could make me look foolish because I was playing into their hands. Like, I was sort of taking the bait every time, wasn't I? So if I just don't do that, I've just noticed it just makes my life way better. So fuck it. There's the new approach.
That's a really good point. Like, what would it be?
I'll tell you how I would do it. Right, I can't do it now because I'd have to rewind the clock. But if I could go back in time, here's all I would have done, Semmler. After the first tweets I made defending you, I would still have a lot of the same discussions and points, but not on Twitter. What I would have done is this. I would have made the first tweets. Then when it blew up, I would have taken it to a platform I control, YouTube, where on YouTube, I'm now showing you the tweets of people being rude to me. You're realizing they're nutters. I'm making funny comments and insightful remarks about the topic of women in esports and making funny. Dude, in that scenario, I control the dynamics. Like, my mistake was just letting people make me look silly or like a pantomime character on fucking Twitter. So I just don't let them, I don't get baited as much now, basically. Do you have a flaw you would remove?
I mean, I've mentioned this in the past, but procrastination.
Oh, it's a hard one for sure. Yeah.
100% procrastination for me. Because I have this really nasty habit of procrastinating, and because I need that like sense of impending doom
or something urgency
going on.
Yeah.
And so it's like constant. And so that's I'm always fighting that procrastination. That if I could get rid of that, but then again, it's like this immediately with no effort, then are you, again, I guess it is just the no effort thing, but the part of the journey, right? Part of understanding why it is that you behave the way it is. If you get rid of it, do you understand why, or are you just going to keep repeating the same mistake in a different way? But yeah, one flaw would be procrastination. Absolutely. All right. It's young Badger. Sorry. Thorin, do you have any thoughts on the potential sale of Liverpool FC?
Not really. Like, the thing is, like, I don't know loads about the business side of football. I mean, you should watch it, but I'll just say, like, as long as they get bought by someone reasonable, I think it'll be good. Like, I actually thought the last owners seemed like they did a great job. They've done an amazing job, like, on the transfer market. They've spent money, but not spent too much. Like, no, I mean, like, look, it is the team I'll always care about, but as long as it gets a good owner, and put it this way, nearly all the money in football is dirty as fuck anyway. So as long as they do a good job with the team, who gives a shit, right?
If you're like, that's really the frustrating thing about this whole situation, is that now it feels like there are certain fields that you just can't be in anymore without coming in contact with dirty money. That's just the long and short of it. So either you accept that and continue to be in that field for the sake of whatever it is that you're doing, or you go somewhere else. That's pretty much it. Like, and that's going to be across most media and most competition now, it feels like, unless you're in like some super niche sport. But I've been watching like a lot of snooker lately, and that's definitely it's something that's popping up there as well, and that you just have to accept it. That's the way it's going to be. Divorce lives in Lucky's shadow. Can Device exit Lucky's shadow? Well, I don't know. Apparently not. Shadow in his bland debut tomorrow. How much greater are Lucky's career achievements, and will Divorce ever be able to catch up? Will he ever overcome the shadow of Lucky's famous Mirage B Apartments jump headshot highlight at Blast, which overshadowed his career achievements up to that point?
I will
Short
say,
answer.
as an aside, I don't know if he's doing it intentionally, because he's obviously, like, the joke there is obviously it's the opposite of all of that. But if you remember, there was that article that famously was written by, I think it was .esports. Do you remember this, Semmler? When they initially brought Lucky in, I think it was even for the RMR or something, some guy at .esports wrote a news piece where he unironically wrote the line that, like, Lucky had, like, completely filled the shoes of Device or something mental. Like, he actually did write that for real. So everyone memed him at the time and, like, made fun of it. So I don't know if he's slightly referencing that at all, but obviously Lucky was dog shit, wasn't he? So it was just whatever.
Hey, maybe, dude, I would not be surprised if that is the reference. If
And the
that's
joke here
the
is,
root of this reference.
you would think because some nobody guy got to play as the AWPer for Astralis that his name was appropriate. But if you actually see how his career went, his name was entirely inappropriate. Lucky, motherfucker, are you kidding me? Get the fuck out of here. That was also, you'll never see that player again. How brutal's that? The fuck?
He's in
He's in some team. He's in Trick or something again, I think, isn't he? Is he in
Trick?
Squad?
Yeah, I think he's in
something
Trick.
like that, right?
Yeah,
He's
he's
in
in
some
Trick.
team. I forget which one.
So I mean, there you go. All right,
Joke being, we know he got tricked. Yeah, no shit.
he did. Yeah,
Keep going. Like.
poor bastard. Hinota, considering there's a chance that FaZe Clan will go under in the following months, what are some of their most memorable?
He means the org there, not the CS:GO
org, yeah.
team. Yeah, the orgs.
That will be remembered. What are some of their most memorable scams that will be remembered throughout esports history?
The one that everyone forgets, dude, is I'm pretty sure, wasn't it originally actually some of the big FaZe streamers who also had, like, you know, if you remember, I'm sure some of them were involved in some sort of almost like a Phantom Lord type thing where it was like a dodgy casino type thing.
There's some kind of skin thing.
Didn't one of them
going
like
on, wasn't
own
there?
it themselves as well? You know what I mean? I'm sure back in the day that one of them was involved with one of those, because the whole premise back in the day, it's a bit like crypto, is any of these areas, if you yourself were an influencer, you could just take your whole audience and put them on this shit, couldn't you? And have them all just feeding the business. So I know back in the day, some of them were involved with that shit.
I think you're 100% right on that. I think that definitely sounds familiar to me, that there was some kind of skin gambling,
skin market or gambling or casino or something. One of the two. Yeah.
On the FaZe stuff. I need to listen to. I know that Richard put a video out on it this week about FaZe Up or Down. I guess I gotta give that a listen to try and get dialed in a little bit on some of what's going on with FaZe, but I can't answer you, man. Scams that will be remembered throughout esports history.
They did that one with like NFTs or something. That was some semi-dodgy one, right?
I mean, I don't know. The obvious
because
didn't they
the worst of theirs? No, the worst of theirs, dude, is I think they even had one which was like a charity product. It wasn't even literally called like For the Children or something. Like the joke there being like giant industry figure fucking over a bunch of children after they said online they'd help them. Who do they think they are? Frankie Ward. Whatever, you get it. You get it.
Yasuke, what's up, dude? In 3 to 4 years,
Whatever.
how much of this current esports market correction will be looked at as the fault of the general economy, and they'll refuse to acknowledge any lessons or take any accountability for their role in the challenges esports will face this year?
No, he's right. By the way, what he's predicting there is how idiots in esports get away with it. Is they always just imply like it's not my fault. Like, for example, the best example is the online era Semmler. Even though it was actually that a bunch of businesses were terribly run, had promised and leveraged themselves out of control, expected to get year-on-year increases in VC. No, they pretended as though like nothing they were doing business-wise was whack, and that it's all because of some cold or flu that was going around the world. That was what made them suddenly have no money and be shit at business. Like it wasn't the hens coming home to roost, like, you know, eventual consequences of not being able to trick the greater fool 7 times. Of course, it was all those things. So I would say the online era is probably foreshadowing of what he's talking about, which is, I agree. When a bunch of these people do get the market correction and get fucked, they'll just pretend like it's not that they're on the bad end of the curve, hence they got affected by the correction. They'll act like it's like a typhoon just came and swept over the village. Like, what could any of us have done? Like, you could have done things. Hence why, by the way, the legit people will survive. They won't be fucking getting, swept out to the sea, will they? They'll be just still here. So I think they will they'll all double down and pretend it wasn't their fault, though, for sure.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. The cockroaches will survive as well, because there's always another sucker.
Oh, there's always some Nicola Nion fucker will still be here. Yeah, that's right.
Oh yeah. Like you say, they will. I think you're bang on the money in that sense. How do you think ESL survived multiple collapses?
Yep.
That's why I literally had somebody telling me the other day, and it's just like, I don't understand, Semmler. Why would you bet against ESL? And I'm like, because I couldn't see myself working with them. I had to, but I guess if you look at it from that perspective, if I wanted to have that long career, cushy all the way, would have gone with ESL for would have sided with ESL and never stepped away from it. Never stepped away from ESL. Would have just gotten some kind of long-term deal, become a full-time employee, because you know that ESL are going to be that company that survives through everything, because they are utterly ruthless and they know how to play every game in the book, to stay alive in the space. If you wanted a cushy kind of job, that would have been it. But that's not what it's about.
More to life. Come on.
There you
more
go.
To life, guys.
All right.
Because
Zumba,
whenever someone asks a question like that, which this is one thing fans love to do. They love to ask mega revealing questions, but then offer nothing themselves. Here's what I would like to do, Semmler, when someone asks that question. I want to bring him into the scene, and suddenly he enters a third bot. And what we do then is we do the opposite. We grill him, and we go, right, here's the premise. You work for ESL now, right? I'm going to increase the stakes, and you tell me when you finally quit working with him, right? So now Ralph Reichart from ESL's fucking your wife. You're going to keep working with him? Remember, cushy job, or leave it. Because the point we're making is he's trying to do this to us the other way around. He's almost implying we're fools for not going, look, we can work all the bloody events, Semmler, if we just checks notes, ignore everything we think is morally wrong in the world. That's the big deal breaker, you idiot. Some of the I'd like to go to you then and find out how corrupt you are. Would you just let ESL do? Would you let ESL, Ralph Reichart, Carmen? Can they just do everything in your life? Can they fuck your cousin in the face? Can they fucking steal all the fucking moonshine your dad's been making? Slap your mum on the? What can they do? Is there no? My question for you is, where's your fucking line? Where's your line in the sand? Because if there's none, by the way,
question.
If there is none, and you're just willing to let them do anything for a video game tournament, it's not worth it.
We got to that point, and that person promptly stopped talking to me. So
fair enough then. Okay.
So
there you go.
we got to that point.
There you go. You found the answer.
It was fun. It was an entertaining evening. It was good. It was worth it. Last question of the evening. Zumba, what's your favorite type of chocolate? Are you a chocolate man?
I am, but the problem is, this is another thing I learned by going to other countries, is British chocolate, like Cadbury's or fucking like Galaxy, the Nestle one, those chocolates, when they make them for the British palate, it's like they're not as sweet as Americans. They're not like a Hershey that's a bit sickly sweet, but they're not as actually bitter as European chocolate. They're more in the middle. So I would say essentially, if you're British, the milk chocolate we have is really unique, but that exact flavor is the type of chocolate I like. Essentially, if you just go and buy a classic Cadbury's milk chocolate, that's the chocolate I like.
Nice. I don't know.
I'm not a big, put it this way, cause I'm from a poor background. If you gave me some amazing Swiss chocolate, it'd probably be too rich for me, Semmler. If you know what I mean. It's too rich. It's too rich.
There's a lot of chocolate in Sweden. They do a lot of variety. They have one that's pretty banger. That's it's like French nougat inside the chocolate. So it's dark chocolate with French nougat inside.
Nougat, yeah.
That's dangerous, man. I'll eat a whole bar of that. It's bad. It's a special occasion chocolate. Yeah, it's so good. All right, well, there we go. That's the show. It's been a good one, man. Good times. Thanks very much for the questions, guys, and thanks for the support, and thanks also for being so cooperative. Obviously, as we transition from Garcoin into a different model. So big thanks for everybody for being so understanding with that front, and thank you for the continued support. And also thanks everybody tuning in. Really appreciate it. And we'll be back next week. We'll be talking about obviously the results of the first week of the year of S tier Counter-Strike Blast kicking off with spring finals or spring groups. So we'll be getting into that next week, and then whatever other drama goes on. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Thorin? Or
It's all good.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for the show, man. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.
Chris is still in the picture. Oh, I'm still very much in the round. Oh, Chris, he's found 3. It's down to a 2-on-2. Chris, can he close this with an ace? Oh my God!
Gives him a chance at least, and this